February 15th, 2022 regular meeting. At this time, I would like to call a meeting to order at 7 p.m. I would like us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Supervisor Kowal.
Here.
Clerk Noble here. Treasurer Roman.
Here.
Trustee Ruggles.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Voorhees.
Present.
Trustee Powell.
Here. Very good. Roll call. Full house. We are going to be removing item 9A from the agenda at the submitter's request for future submittal. So 9A will be removed. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I have a motion to approve. Support. I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next, item 5, public comment. This time, if you have anything that you'd like to say, you need to come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes to do so, and you may address the board. So, as I call you in an orderly fashion. So, public hearing is now open.
Mr. Supervisor, as a point of interest, could you remind them that they might prefer to keep some of their
Oh, I
comments for
beg your
later on in the
pardon,
meeting?
yes. Yeah. You know, I got so used to Zoom, I'm still every now and slipping. When the item comes up, we generally allow comment at that time. So if there's an item on the, thank you, Mr. Powell. If there's an item on the agenda that you want to comment at that time, then that's the time we'll give you an opportunity to chat. But if there's anything that is not on the agenda, like the weather or the Russians in the Ukraine or something like that that you want to talk about, by all means do so. Seeing none, closing public comment, moving on to consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. The course says revenue, expenses, checks, department reports, and items as such that are all public record and available at any time for anyone from the public to look at and review. Item number 7, minutes. Approval of the minutes of regular board meeting of January 18th, 2022. Any comment or question from the board? Mr. Powell.
Mr. Supervisor, besides a couple very minor points, I just wanted to thank Jennifer and thank Doug from the clerk's office in an extremely large set of minutes, and I believe they did an excellent job. I wanted to thank Jennifer for the great job of taking them and Doug in the clerk's office for preparing them. With that, I make a motion to approve the regular minutes of January 18th as submitted.
Motion to approve all 24 pages of minutes. And again, thank you. Looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Andy Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Old business, second reading, River Cadiz Development Rezoning Request. This is a request that has been before the board, went for its first reading, will now be in its second reading, would go to adoption for the property that is the parcel west of Town Center area, and that would be River Cadiz rezoning request to RM2 from agricultural. Mr. O'Neill.
Really don't have a whole lot to add. Tonight is the second reading that's required by law in the process. As you may recall, and I'm projecting it here if the mouse will cooperate, this is the Township Library for purposes of orientation. You can see, and there's no particular reason other than that the Oakland County program didn't allow us to use the same line thickness when highlighting the parcels. There are 2 parcels involved in this request. This one outlined in a thinner red line here, immediately adjacent to the library property, and this triangular parcel here, of which probably nearly half of it is in the water further south, adjacent to the township's property and to Stanley Park. So this is a second reading to rezone from agricultural to RM2. The previous report was given, does indicate that it is consistent with the township's master plan or future land use plan. And this was unanimously recommended to you for approval by the Planning Commission after a public hearing that was held there. If you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. And I know Mr. Matt Schwanitz, who you met a month ago at first reading, is here again tonight if you have any questions for him on behalf of the applicant.
Anyone on the board, any additional comments? Mr. Powell?
I have a question of the owner, or the owner's representative, if possible.
Can do. Matt Schwanitz, for the record, Matt Schwanitz, 24 West Adams, Suite 12, Detroit, Michigan.
Thank you. Good evening, Matt.
Hey, Mike.
I'm wondering what your opinion might be as to the impact on the development if the 20-acre rectangular parcel is not rezoned, but the balance of it is.
It's a spot zone. We'd be subject to a challenge by anybody on the planet. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think our client would close on the deal.
Well, I'm not asking you, I'm asking you what the impact of your development would be on the density and the layout of your development if that were not rezoned.
That's the impact. If we don't get that, it would remain as a spot zone and it could be appealed. We do not want to be in that position.
Well, when you say spot zone, so that you know,
The landlocked parcel.
it's a landlocked parcel, but it's right adjacent to existing agricultural zone property, so it's not spot zoning, because the township property is zoned agricultural as well. So at any time in the future, when the township does something on their property, that property can be modified so it's not spot zoning. So spot zoning is, if it's isolated all by itself with different zoning all the way around, obviously that's typically spot zoning. So you're representing to this board that your client will not go forward with the entire project, with any of the project, if that 20 acres is not rezoned as well.
Correct.
No matter, and you can't share with us how that might impact a development being
I
proposed
think
on
that's
the balance
yet
of
to be
property.
determined. They haven't done all of theirs.
There's no concept plan. We have not evaluated the layout of the property. We want to be in proper position to be able to close on the property and not have that challenged after closing.
And what is the reason you went to R2 instead of R1, if in fact you've not done any conceptual studies on the property?
The economics of the allowed density.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board
Yeah,
this
one-
time? Mr. Ruggles?
So on the southern parcel, you say you don't have any plans as far as what your development might be, but you would want to build something on that?
I think both in the body of the McKenna report and what I can see on the database of both the county GIS and the, I always want to say DEQ, but the Eagle wetlands maps, there's only a small fraction of that, a very small fraction of that that's even upland. Most of it, probably 80%, maybe even 90% is wetland. And I'm just, that's a knee-jerk observation without having measured it. That's all it's buildable, and DEQ would not allow us to fill or develop wooded wetland, period.
So the purpose of rezoning it to the density that you want is to be able to utilize that density on the other parcel?
Whatever's left, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Roman?
Yeah, Rick, you were talking to me a little bit about RM2 versus RM1, and if I understood you, I thought you had mentioned RM2 could very well mean less clearing of land. Can you kind of?
Well, it could. I mean, when you have the RM1 and RM2, RM1 typically calls for, what's our square footage per lot for RM1?
It's actually based on the unit type. There's a square footage that's based on the type of unit, from efficiency all the way up to a 3-bedroom. There's, I think, usually a
An
10
average.
10,000 square feet
Okay,
is
I'll say
the
about
minimum,
10,000.
and then you add square footage based on the number of units, based on their configuration. So it's quite a formula. So it's really tough to say, but
The number 10,000 sticks in my head. So you have 10,000 square feet for a single-family home. If you do combined units, so you can have multiple units together, you can have an actual lesser impact on the area, environmental, and better land use in those particular areas. There's a calculation factor for that, too.
are you saying that you're allowed to build a fewer buildings and maybe mass it in such a way to where you're building more units on one and then preserving more? If that's what you're saying, then I would say that there's an opportunity for that.
Yeah, that is.
So that's what you meant then?
That's what I meant.
Okay.
And you can see Mr. Powell is shaking his head in agreement. And this is an understanding that you folks have to have, that going RM1, you end up with what I call cookie cutter lots. You have to go and cut anything and everything down to get number of units that you want. RM2 allows you to cluster things closer together so that you have the opportunity of which the developer and this township and this board very much wants to conserve as much of that area as possible in its natural beauty. And that actually is going to be a huge attraction for the persons that want to eventually live there. You know, if you give me an opportunity between going into a subdivision and buying a flat square piece of land that doesn't even have so much as a dandelion on it, or you give me one that is full of trees, I'm going to opt out for the one with trees. Although after a tornado, I don't think a lot of people might think the same way. But I will still opt for the trees because of the beauty of the land. So, and that is something that River Cadiz is completely aware of, and they find a value in that particular feature of the property, which is why they have a heightened interest in it and are going through this process. I'm going to tell you, I told you before, and I'm going to tell you again, this board will not allow any reckless abandon to happen on this land. There are regulatory bodies out there, Eagle, our ordinances, our planning director, the planning commission, this township board. There are multiple layers that this will have to go through before a final site plan would be approved. And all of you would be able to participate, public input, at a planning commission and comment that you might be able to make and say, hey, you know, what about, and watch the process come to fruition. And that way you'll know how it may or may not impact you. We've had other projects in the township, and I mentioned one earlier. We had a project over off of Williams Lake Road called New Hope. I get that right. Where it was a rather sensitive area just north of Settlers Point. And folks were really concerned about what's going to happen there. The developer saw the value of putting a natural features buffer all the way around the property. So the first, how many feet, John? Like 50?
I think it's 100 over there.
Oh, 100, okay, it's larger than that. In that particular case, the first 100 feet from anyone that might abut to it, nothing happens, zero. Everything is still there, the trees, the squirrels, it's all still happening. And there's no effect to that area. And that is now become more and more commonplace. Now, the size of the buffer and where and how it all comes together is all yet to be determined by the land layout and use. So it has been done and it worked very well over there. So.
Yeah, the one thing that, you know, everyone is very much aware, and as are the neighbors who are familiar with this property and have been probably for a number of years. You know, we publish that this is approximately 64 acres. That's the gross acreage on this property, but we all know that there are significant amounts of wetland, submerged lands, and streams throughout this property that cannot be built on, cannot be filled. The township won't support it. Eagle won't support it. It's just not going to be allowed. So I don't have a number for you yet. I don't have an analysis yet. But of the 64 acres, I would assume that a couple of dozen acres at least are completely untouchable. So, you know, that's something that is the case now and would be the case regardless of a zoning district.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add to.
Certainly.
The theme a few people mentioned. The RM2 also gives us a little more diversity in the product types. Rather than having one or two products, this is a large piece of land for you know, a medium density project. We'll be able to put in hopefully a couple of extra product types, which not only creates diversity for the area, diversity in terms of the visual nature of it, but also creates a good short-term development schedule. We're not going to be grinding away on a 20-year march of death with one product. It just takes forever to get through. That diversity is very helpful on the front-end development and on the back-end quality.
Very good.
I might be taking your thought, but
Trustee Smith.
thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I might be taking Mr. Powell's thought, but also through this discussion, this zoning, correct me if I'm wrong, allows for the footprint to be more concise on the property as well. Perhaps, you know, we're going to, we don't know because we don't have any plan yet, but perhaps you might be able to have a, you know, a more confined or concise footprint instead of sprawling out on the development.
Cluster, like as in a cluster, absolutely.
And then the last thing I want to mention is, which I think we've all been very transparent and upfront about. And Mr. Roman, Mr. Noble, and Mr. Ruggles and myself all walked this property with residents that asked us to. We've been very transparent and forthcoming that we want to be good stewards of this land, that we are going to protect it, that we're very well aware that there's wetlands, and we are not going to, allow them to be encroached upon. And it's a very tedious process with permits that Eagle will be protecting that area, and we're all aware of that, and we're all on the same page, to protect those wetlands. So just want to reassure the residents again that.
And I might remind everybody, Eagle's not the last step. If Eagle gets carried away on a permit for a project like this, the EPA, this is still federal wetlands. It's not just state. That's the ultimate appeal. So.
Yeah, there's lots of layers. It's not like it was back in the 60s, 70s, or even the 80s, and it's gotten progressively more and more complex and more involved to do things. So the days of cutting and filling are long gone. And in this community, we relish what woodlands and what areas we have. And we know that you're not going to necessarily stop development, but we'll do what we can to control it and have it fit the appropriate setting. And there's value in that, so it'll add a lot. Mr. Powell.
Yes, Matt, you were pretty definite about the rezoning requirement in order for your client to continue with this project. I want to make sure that it doesn't hang over our head on every step along the way. So what is your client's schedule for closing on this property?
I can't speak. I don't know the exact dates or the timeline on that.
So when
it will move very quickly. They're already authorizing primary studies. It was brought up in one of the earlier meetings that we might have a raptor nest somewhere on the property, possibly an eagle. That contract was cut loose a couple days ago.
So you were adamant that if it weren't rezoned, your client would not move ahead. Are you just as adamant that if the site plan submitted to this township is not approved, your client won't go forward with the project as well?
If it's not approved, we can't go forward.
No, if the one that you've proposed doesn't go through, doesn't mean it's not developable. So what I'm referring to is, if you get to a point you're submitting plans to us, and we believe there is a detriment that we want to preserve or protect, or we want you to modify your plan in order to protect the lake, the environment, the trees, the wetlands, is your client going to be just as adamant about not moving forward if this board holds to its position?
Not at all, because there's a commitment from our client with the township on having a unified development. Both this and the township complex will work together, not apart.
Okay, thank you.
That was a concern that had been brought up in several meetings along the way, and that point was conveyed very clearly, that they may come to us with a plan. We may look at it and say, hey, you need to move this over this way, or you got to tweak this or tweak that. But that's what the planning director will do on a cursory review and then forward it to the planning commission. And again, there are layers for this process. So through those layers, that's what will determine how it will be laid.
That theme has been repeated to me probably a half a dozen times now by the client.
Correct. Okay.
So I think bottom line is, if I don't know if the people here understand that I'm a civil engineer. I work with developers every day. The developers typically only have one thing in mind, and that's the bottom line. And this board is here to prevent that from being the deciding factor. And I think that's what we're all committed for. I don't believe, as a civil engineer, that it's the quantity of water that you're concerned about, because that lake can handle water. It's the quality of that water that goes into the lake that's the biggest concern. And there are a great deal of new techniques to prevent direct runoff into the lake, besides just detention basins and retention basins. The EPA has really demanded that the Eagle, which now has demanded that the Oakland County Drain Commission, that filters down to our community, try to recharge the groundwater instead of letting that water flow off unrestricted, or even restricted but not filtered properly, but perk the water away back into the ground in the location that the rain actually processed in its natural state. And that's what I'm going to be looking for, to minimize the impact on the lake and the wetlands by perking the water away and not just holding it and letting it run off into the lake. So that's why I asked you. Obviously, we're going to hold you to the most modern, most efficient, best technique for dealing with stormwater and protecting the lake. So thank you, Matt.
You know, we've had other areas within the township that were areas of concern. We recently had a development on the corner of Union Lake Road and Coulee Lake Road. It used to be a former hobby shop and a myriad, about 5-6 acres of property over there. And we had multiple meetings with that, and people were worried about the water and this and that and everything. Well, the reality is in that particular case was that was an asphalt ocean. I mean, it was one big sea of asphalt. And the issues that they have had there have been minimal at best. They had some issues that came to the top of the pile, but come to find out those issues came from Waterford. It didn't actually come from that development when it was traced down. So the storm scepters and the swirl separators that were installed to treat the water were working very effectively. It was a neighboring development that was actually upstream that was causing a little bit of discharge. It was interesting.
Yeah, and I might add to Mike's comment, one of the other things the state and the county is cranking down on even harder than they did, not that they were lax about it, is how you handle stormwater during construction.
Yeah.
You strip sites, you clear, you start grading. A lot of people look the other way, or some civils, not Mike's firm, certainly not ours, kind of look the other way on it. They do a general sketch, but really don't look at how construction is staged and how stormwater is handled during that staging. That's our job.
Yeah, disruption of the land during the process will result, in greater challenges, but they are definitely doable. There's no question about it. I've been on projects and done some projects myself that I was less than 300 feet from the Paint Creek in Rochester. There's trout in there. So I had friendly visitors every day, and every time I had a rain event. And we never received a citation. We just implemented all the best practices, and we never had any problems. So it is definitely doable in the future. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Anyone care to make a comment in the audience? You will need to come up to the podium, and you will have 3 minutes to state your name and case. 3 minutes.
I only got a minute. Brian Sinkoff, 7593 Biscayne Avenue. I want to personally, and on behalf of all the Lakewood Village owners who have access to the Brundle Lake, thank the board members who spent all that time walking the land with me. It was I was educated in the process, and I trust that you learned a few things and also realized after the walk how sensitive this piece of land is to Brundle Lake. If it is not developed, taking into account a running creek that goes directly into the lake. I have a better feeling now that the board is going to have its best interest in environmentally protecting Brundle Lake. That being said, out of the 64.8 acres to be rezoned, we all realize on our walk, many of those acres are not buildable. If you take the 20 acres of the wetland at the frontage, on the lake frontage, the steeper hill as you approach those 20 acres, I estimate about 3 acres, the very steep embankment to a good portion of the creek, I estimate about 8 to 10 acres, and the wetlands south of M59 that a lot of people didn't seem to be aware of, I estimate at 3 acres. I guess it would be a reasonable estimate to say that there's 34 to 36 acres left that's buildable. So I just trust that the planning committee, the planning commission, and the town board will take that into consideration, because if you put 640 units, and plop that on 30 acres, you can have a really high density. And you're sort of shaking your head, but when I talked to several of the board members, they said if there's 64.8 acres, you're allowed
You're allowed up to doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yes, so I'm making the comment, but even, in the master plan where I found it now, even if you use 6 units, into that 30 acres, you're talking about some high density, but 1,740 if you. So I did, if River Candace does wind up purchasing the property, we all look forward to working together to protect our most precious asset, Brenda Lake. So that's pretty much what I had to say. Mr. Powell, I didn't get to, you were out of town, so didn't get to really speak with you during the time, but I know the board members, there's some controversy when we walk the land on the east side, what the property line is. So I know some board members said the library has some stuff west of the creek, and they assured me we were going to see a map today to show who owns what.
And Brian, I apologize, I was not able to make it to your
Yep,
meeting.
we understand.
Health challenges
Yep,
would not
we
have been my
understand
friend that
that.
day.
Yep, we understand. Yep, so,
Mr.
Thank you.
O'Neill has a map available for us this evening to show you.
okay, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, and if I could show you really, this is the property line of the library. You can see this red outline if you're looking at the screen, and it comes through here and comes right up the side of the parking.
It's the creek.
Yeah, I believe it is, yeah.
It's hard to see the
That
creek.
line, that traverse
It
line
is the creek,
follows, that's
Yeah.
roughly follows the creek, because when the township initially purchased that property from the owners, that was the line that was the most logistical, line to work from and create that parcel. So, and it was also a concern of the township, because we have an area there that, of course, as that gets developed, we're going to be dealing with the same thing. We're going to have water from our roof and things of that nature that we're going to have to be responsible to treat. So we have to meet the same high standards as are required. And we're under greater scrutiny because we're a governmental agency. So there's a lot to be said about that. Anyone else have anything they want to say at this time?
Dennis Anderson, 7485 Oak Bay Drive. First, I'd like to thank Brian for taking the time and going out there and walking the property, and also reporting to all of us exactly what you found, and the board members that went for the walk on the property. We really appreciate your time, and I hope you understand our concerns now that you've been out there on that property. Just for a clarification, M2 allows you to go to what type of vertical, if I may ask?
RM2, I believe, is 35
feet?
35 feet.
And what's the difference between M2 and M1 in that regard, if I may ask?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you.
If you don't mind? For all of us, so that they all understand.
Sure. The height in RM1 is 35 feet or 2 stories, whichever is less. And that is the same for RM2,
RM2, so it's-
35 feet or 2 stories, whichever is less.
Okay, so it would be no projects over 2 stories,
Or 35 feet.
or 35 feet. Will M2 allow
I
for...
want to make sure that we understand that a site plan has not been submitted
Right,
yet.
right.
And this board has the opportunity, if we feel that if we could put one less building on the site, I would rather see an extra story put on than another building put on the site. That's kind of my mentality. So less imprint on the ground, I don't mind going up another story.
Less carbon footprint, less imprint. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Does M2 allow for retail?
No,
No?
it's strictly residential.
Strictly residential? Is that true?
Well, I don't know. This generally isn't a back and forth dialogue, so if the supervisor.
I'm sorry, I
would
was
like me to-
asking, does M2 allow for
Well,
retail?
and I'm just.
It's generally
waiting
for
to-
comment, but RM2 is strictly residential. You can look all that, up if you'd like to, online. We have a complete listing of all
I was
these.
just asking because I know some of my neighbors were also concerned and didn't understand that, so I wanted to get a clarification.
No, there is no
You might
no
want to
retail.
ask Sean to explain.
Yeah,
Well, I can, but I'm very familiar with that zoning.
Okay.
Okay, so,
thanks.
okay.
Appreciate it. That's all I had.
We're not being funny, but normally during public comment, it's not a dialogue. We just are here to listen.
It's just a
and
comment.
then just, comments only, and then when it's done, we make our comments.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time to walk the property.
And if you have questions, please contact planning department at any time. Okay, all right. Anyone else at this time? Okay, that being said, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Given the weather, I think you're dressed perfectly fine.
Al Moisky, 890 Beachway, Lakewood Village. Also spent 15 years at 387 Hillwood. Wife and I owned the Acapulco Tan, White Lake. So our concern is just the, we understand the development and not just, I appreciate the fact that it sounds like it's a controlled development, and for everyone taking the time to appreciate everyone here's concerns. My biggest concern is the lake, okay? Because I've lived on the lake, again, 40-some years, and it's overcrowded right now. My concern is that the development down the road for my kids and grandkids will not be able to enjoy the lake because it'll be overpopulated. It'll be dangerous. And I did have a question also. Is there plans to develop the water with docks? I mean, there was the trailer or the mobile home park or whatever, which was a constant battle putting they would, how do we say, infringe on the property, put docks that weren't approved. Township would do their due diligence, make them take them out. It was a constant battle. However, it overpopulated the lake even more, and I'm just concerned that the lake will be overpopulated. And right now we have it's nice. It's a private lake. We don't have a launch, a public launch. Will that change in the future? Will it become a private lake? I don't know. You guys are here to represent us as a community, so I would like, that taken into consideration as if this project develops and moves forward, to take the lake and the people that are on the lake consideration. So that's all I had. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. To address some of that, we've made it very clear to the developer that this lake's preservation is a very high priority and that we would not really look fondly on those types of amenities. And I would think you, again, would realize what we've already done. We've preserved a huge section. You could have had 60 potential boat slips or whatever crazy number it was had we not purchased the former Brendel campground. When this opportunity came before this board, I went after that like a devil goes after a soul. And this board had the opportunity to go forth and work together to now turn it into what is now Stanley Park. So we see the value in having that parcel of land that way and the value of putting the least amount of impact on the lake. So again, we are highly, highly aware of it and highly sensitive to that. Okay, moving on, back to my board. Any further questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Grace Springer, 676 Elkinford, and I moved up here for the beauty, for the people. Being originally from Alabama, I love the snow and I love your land and I love your area. My concern primarily is with everyone else is about the lake and the woods and the land that we have there, but also social impact that it's going to bring. I worked for the Census Bureau for a while, and I don't know that you've done the studies on the social impact, statistical impact of having apartments as opposed to single-family dwellings in a location, the things that typically come along with that, and a wide variety of legal, educational, all kinds of different opportunities that there are. I have social concerns with that situation, and I'm also concerned that making this decision when there are a lot of questions that you don't have answers to, a lot of plans that are being made that have not yet been presented. And I know that you're watching this with very due diligence, and I'm very grateful for that. But I would like for you to consider all the things that you're having to say I don't know to yet in the position of making this decision. And also one other question to consider. I know that the owner of this property, it's good for him to be able to get a chance to sell it and not have that burden. But why was that option I presented to the community to see if some of the owners would like to get together and buy a portion of that land before it was put out to be made into apartment dwellings in our backyard.
Thank you. Anyone else before I close the public? Okay, I'm now closing the public. Okay, back to the board now. Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
Well, we could answer the last question from, so the property has been for sale for 20-some years, and it's open for anyone to purchase. So if there was a group that wanted to purchase it, they could have. There's been a for sale sign on it for as long as I can remember. So anyone is welcome to offer to the seller, and River Caddis happened to offer, and they're in negotiations. So the property, just like any other private property being sold, is up for anyone to make a purchase offer. So that would be answering, I believe is Grace, that would be answering her question.
And they decided to sell it as the size parcels that they did, and that would have been what they wanted to sell. Mr. Powell.
Yeah, something else was brought up that I wanted to clarify. It's not that we don't want to know the answers. It's that the state law does not allow us to consider a site plan in a standard rezoning project. Because the way the enabling legislation is, that if they present a site plan to us in representing that that's what they're going to put in, and then we consider the rezoning, we can rezone. The very next day, they can submit a totally different plan. And so we have to look at it as a use, not a site plan issue. So the site plan issue is going to come next. So we had to say, we don't know, the owner doesn't know, at least he's not representing that, but we can't take into account a site plan because we can't hold them to that site plan until after it's rezoned, so.
The Plan Enabling Act.
Right.
Yes, thank you. Okay. At this time, any further discussion from the board members? Okay, that being done, I will.
The social impact was addressed.
I beg your pardon?
The social impact that she had brought up was not addressed.
Yeah. Well, it may be addressed as further studies when it goes into the site planning process, and the site planning process will address that. That's what that will do. And that will be before the Planning Commission and the Planning Department. And our Community Development Director will deal with those types of elements in the process, and that's what they will do at that time. So, okay, that being said, I'm looking for a motion, one way or the other here. Mr. Roman.
A motion to approve second reading of the rezoning request from Ag to RM2.
I have a motion to move to second reading. I will support that motion.
It's not moved to second reading.
I mean, to adopt, I beg your pardon.
Adoption.
To adopt, okay. Beg your pardon. The RM2 best use of this particular parcel. That being said, I will go for a roll call vote.
Who was second?
I seconded it. Roll call vote?
Can I make a comment during my vote?
Certainly.
Yeah. Before I vote, I just say that the only reason that I'm going to vote in favor of this is because it gives us the flexibility to reduce the footprint of the development. Mm-hmm. There's no way that I'm just one vote, there's no way that I would ever sit here and watch that piece be totally consumed with this density. So I'm going to vote yes, just for the reason that it gives us the ability to control it and reduce the footprint.
Yeah, and you're putting yourself out of a location, too.
Need to go fund me, you know.
Yeah.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to comment as well.
Yes, Mr. Powell.
In concern of the lake and possibly the overcrowding of the lake, I'm going to be very adamant that as apartments, they're going to have their profit in the apartments and walking the site. If this were a single-family development, I believe that I would be in favor of allowing those single families to have access to the lake with some dockage, boatage, and things like that, because single family has a much more interest in utilizing the lake on an individual basis. And so I believe we can control the activity around the lake much better if these are apartments than I would feel comfortable if it were rezoned as single-family. So that's my position on that as well.
Well, we had motion, we had support. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Powell,
Yes.
Trustee Voorhees,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Trustee Ruggles,
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes. Treasurer Roman,
Yes.
Supervisor Kowal.
Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving on to item 8B.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank you,
very
everyone.
much for coming.
And again, I would say when this moves forward, there'll be planning commission meetings and things of that nature where you'll be able to see what's going on. So, be part of it.
I'd like to thank Brian.
Fine.
I would like to thank you for inviting us out. And not only did we get an opportunity to walk it, but you educated us. And I appreciate you taking the time to organize all that.
Thank you. We all appreciate it.
No, the meeting is in order. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 8B, request to amend where, Mr. Roman, I'm going to put this one on you.
Should I give him just a minute to exit?
Give him a minute.
That was on Facebook. That was the one I got for dinner.
Okay, Mr. Roman, you can.
Okay, so 8B is WODA. So, as you all know, in a previous board meeting, we approved using American Rescue Plan Act money for our WODA contribution in 2022. Government regulations on rescue plan money and COVID money is very difficult to understand at times, and the level of red tape gets really high. What we've learned since we made that contribution is that by using American Rescue Plan Act money, we're going to put a whole lot of work on WODA in regard to reporting. And so it was advised to us, I believe, by Plant Moran to use general fund money instead. That makes double sense now because a lot of ARPA rules are changing as we go. And so my suggestion as well is to use general fund money instead of the ARPA money.
And then we'll backfill with the ARPA money. So it was at their recommendation, yeah. It was a good catch, Mike.
Yeah, any questions from the board? I'll make that a motion to use general fund money to reverse the ARPA fund that was originally used.
I will support that.
Mr. Supervisor, a point of order, maybe the attorney would tell us, if we've taken action, do we have to undo that action, or can the action be undone by a new motion?
I guess I'm not sure, because you made a motion.
We're just reclassifying the monies, Mike, that's all we're doing.
Okay, but we made a motion to pay the funds from a certain fund.
Isn't it a line item in the budget, though?
Yes. WODA is in the budget.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But ARP isn't, the ARP funds are not, so.
Should be.
Yeah, it's in.
Is it in there?
ARPA money that came in is yet to be determined to where its disposition will ultimately be. With the change in the ruling, it's been allowed, if you are a community that has $10 million or less, that you can use the ARPA money for general operation. Okay, so, and there are other little caveats, I'm not going to get into this thing, but.
The laws are changing as we speak. However, the ARPA money is general fund money.
Okay, all right.
So we're really technically moving general fund money back into general fund, but it's going into an ARPA account.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were doing it right, that's all.
Yeah, no, you were just
Okay.
I'll get it out, I can't get it out.
Reappropriating?
Thank you, I couldn't get that out.
I'm good with that then.
The monies, that's all. I will support that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. New business. Consideration of amendment to the planned business development agreement for Zott Automotive Group. As we know, the Zott Automotive Group is now going to be the premier premium Jeep dealer in our community and has a theme that I'll say Jeep wants them to go along with as part of their corporate image, as all the many other companies do the same type of thing. Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you. So before you have tonight the planned business development agreement for consideration. You actually don't have the agreement. It came in late yesterday. Just to back up a little bit, a few weeks ago, we were contacted by the Zott Automotive Group, and they had expressed a desire to upgrade their facade and do some other minor work related to signage as well. That's something that generally we can do administratively, we can approve administratively, and so that was kind of how we approached this from the beginning. Submit your renderings, submit your plan, and we'll take a look at it. In doing so, we did discover that there were a couple things that couldn't just be easily amended. We also discovered that the original development agreement, which back in that day we did not record, we recorded a memorandum of development agreement, which I do not like and we do not do any longer because it's not very helpful. It existed, and the development agreement that we did find in our files did not allow for minor modifications, so it really handcuffed us a bit. So for a couple of reasons, it's before you tonight, as it was before the Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. So what turned out to be a pretty expeditious process ended up having a couple stops along the way. So let me pop this up here. This is what we were provided plan type wise. This isn't as easy to look at as what I'll show you in a second, but this is what was in your packet. Just some new elevations. They're changing the color of the block. They're changing out some of the signage. Originally, when Justin, who did a nice job on this review, because it's complex, this dealership, like every dealership, has requirements of the brand. So periodically they go back and do facelifts and they do additions and things like that, and it's just a requirement everywhere you go, not just here. So he had several iterations to go through and kind of piece back together. And so that is really, this is a better kind of look of what, I should say, a better view of what they're proposing. So at the Planning Commission, through his review, which I know you have in your packet and I won't read to you, it was proposed that there would be minor site plan modifications as well as a development agreement modification because the number of signs exceeded what was previously allowed. I think they were previously allowed 6, somehow 7 got on there. They're asking for 8 now, but what's important to note is that they currently have 7 signs that are a total of 240 square feet. They originally approved for 6 at 207. All of that aside, they want 8 walled signs that are about 121 square feet. So I guess when I consider signage, I'm not just looking at the number, I'm looking at the impact, and that's really the square footage. So don't really have an issue with that, but it's something that needs to be approved in their development agreement. Additionally, the monument sign, which you see right here, I'm going to drop the guy on the street here and let you take a look at their current sign. Back in 2014, I believe, they were approved to have the, all right, cooperate. They were approved to have a post pylon sign. All right, I don't know what's going on here. Give me just a second. And this post pylon sign was allowed by the township to be, that sign right there is, believe it or not, 20 feet tall. So the ordinance does not allow post pylon signs. This is what Chrysler at the time was really pushing. So through the process, they were approved to have a post pylon sign that is 20 feet tall. If you flip to what they're asking for now, they're kind of just filling in that underside of that flag. It is the same height, 20 feet. It's slightly smaller. It's a few square feet smaller in size, and it is technically a monument sign. The ordinance requires monument signs to be no taller than, or allows them to be up to 7 feet tall. It requires a 2-foot masonry base. At the Planning Commission, it was discussed that they could propose boulders around the base of the sign to give the feel of a masonry or higher quality base, and that's what this is showing here, and that's what they plan to incorporate. And certainly it looks better, and it also brings the scale of the sign down a little bit. So that was kind of the goal. The Planning Commission, when they made the recommendation for approval, had no issue with the number or square footage of the signs. They did not like the 20-foot tall sign, and they had objected to that. The other thing that they had objected to was the lighting. This, I believe, is that the dimmed? Yeah, no. So this is what the LED lighting in the report is really calling out. This is the new brand trademark. So you can see the Jeep sign is lit up, and there's not an issue with that. It's that the area of the LED tubing around the facade, technically per our ordinance, counts as a sign. So that is why it was sort of kicked out. So if you, really tonight before you is the full recommendation of the Planning Commission with the removal of this 20-foot high sign, requiring them to be at 7, and the removal of this LED tubing. So, as again, I mentioned, this kind of came quickly to us, and we tried to help them through the process, so there isn't a development agreement for you to consider. But these few elements, really, in your motion tonight, if you so choose, could just be detailed out to give the staff direction to kind of formulate this amendment to an existing development agreement that then could be signed by the supervisor and the clerk. So, the issues are, kind of laid out before you. It's signage, it's sign height, it's LED lighting. And, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know Thad Zod is here. Oh, let me go back here. This is regular. This is with the lights turned on at a regular brightness. This is with the LED lights turned on with dimmed, is what they call it, dimmed. And this is just kind of another daytime view. So I think the report talked about this being in the north and west elevations. It should be noted that this shows that same teak. I think that's what they call this paneling, aluminum paneling, shows teak down the east side, so that the lighting would actually wrap around the east corner as well as the west corner, which is shown better from this angle.
Sean, I got a question, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Did you say the planning commission only wanted to allow that sign to be 7 feet tall?
Yes. So the planning commission and their minutes reflect that. Their motion is specifically to approve the amendment to the final site plan subject to the monument sign being brought into compliance with the township zoning ordinance, which would mean 7 feet, and the removal of the LED accent light strips for the property described, and he lays out the motion maker lays out the parcel ID number. So obviously there are some other conditions and comments that need to be addressed. So yes, that is where they're at with their finding.
I would say, in my opinion, if it was my dealership and I had a 20-foot tall sign, I'd want to keep it.
I agree.
I wouldn't want to go from 20 to 7, I can tell you that.
Especially after we approved it in 2014, I believe it was, to go to that height. I think that's when that was originally done, when they first did the first remodel, way back when.
Yes, it was.
I can't remember that.
Seems like a long time ago, but I mean, I guess 8 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Probably had a much smaller forehead back then.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I did, but you too probably.
Probably.
Yeah,
It
right.
was, the smaller forehead club. Okay. Questions or comments from the board members?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Ruggles.
It seems like, in my opinion, LED lights shouldn't be considered signage.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like the ordinance is too strict?
I don't know if it's too strict. I mean, I'm kind of down the middle with signs. I don't love tons of signs and flashing screens and things like that, but I understand that, there's commercial free speech and property owners have I think, a right to advertise their location. So, certainly that's something that could be looked into further. As you all know, we amend the ordinance and kind of take care of housekeeping items from time to time, probably every 18 months or so. Just wrapped one up. So, signs are really a hot button issue. That's probably one of the most contentious areas or sections of any zoning ordinance in any community, because it's a pretty emotional thing for people whose businesses rely on, that kind of advertising. So, usually people who sit in my seat say, sometimes it's too much or it's too loud or it doesn't look good, but,
So my comment would be, it's the responsibility of this board to keep up with the evolution of an ever-evolving technology that happens in our community. So as Mr. O'Neill, Director O'Neill and I spoke earlier, our ordinances are meant to be a living, breathing document that we can, change to fit in with our community with, reasonably, of course, to keep up with our master plan and the look of, that we all desire to have. But if that is something that our board wishes to change, we certainly can do that in our ordinances if we want to.
Okay, Mr., good? Okay, no,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, thank you. As the board knows, I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and both of these items are extremely emotional when they are brought before the ZBA. I want to agree, and I have to agree with Trustee Ruggles. I'm not a fan of using architectural stripes and/or LED, the new, back when the ordinance was done, there was no such thing as LED lights. And so it needed to be upgraded. And so, but I wanted to bring up to the board that if we make some certain decisions tonight, then we ought to ask the Planning Commission to look at what we're doing and maybe what the changes we might suggest. I'd like to deal with the lighting first. Refresh my memory. What's the name of the restaurant that has now been removed and is going to be repurposed? Sonic. Sonic, in most communities, including in Commerce Township, the planning department takes the lineal footage, actually the square inch of every one of those neon lights, and calls that a sign. And so there have been Sonics done, and I know because I've done them, where those tube lights have had to be removed except for a certain portion because they've exceeded the square footage of signs allowed in the ordinance. I think it's stupid, but quite frankly, that's the way the ordinances read. And our ordinance is exactly the same. When Sonic came in, they had to be controlled as to how many of those neon lights were actually on their building. When the Arby's was just redone, the ordinance calls the orange stripe around the building a sign because it is a corporate image, much like the Golden Arches would be in McDonald's. And so the ZBA felt that it was just a hardship, it was a self-imposed hardship, and therefore we denied the ability of them to put the corporate orange stripe around the building. Not in agreements with it, but the ordinance says that, and if we don't like that, then we ought to direct the planning department and the planning commission to modify it. So if we make that decision today, and those pictures, quite frankly, are very pleasing. And so if we make that decision, then we are ipso facto telling the planning commission, we disagree with the zoning ordinance, modify it, or at least make a recommendation. If we do that, let's make sure that we somehow control the lumens coming from those. As those of you that have modern Christmas trees, you can have those lights so bright that at night you have to turn them down, or you can spin them all the way down to where they're a nice glow. So somehow we're going to have to control those lumens and not just take the owner's word for it and say, we'll make it comfortable, light, soft lighting. That's not something that's controllable. So that's the lighting issue. The sign itself, however, the pylon sign that's up there right now is not legal. The 20-foot is not legal in today's zoning ordinance. But I have to tell you that we denied McDonald's to make their change right across the street. We did not allow Tippin Inn to make their change. They wanted a change from a pylon sign. They wanted to modify it to something more modern. The ZBA did not allow it. We did not allow a number of signs up and down 59 because if you take a look at that, what happens if that Jeep sign is down at 7 feet? Is the owner really going to tell us that you're going to drive by and not notice that that's a Jeep store, a Jeep dealership? Why does the Jeep have to be up 20 feet in order to know that that's a Jeep dealership? And I don't think there's a hardship there. If this came before the ZBA, I would have a really hard time stating that it is a necessity instead of just an I want. And so so you have to be really careful what you're asking for, because quite frankly, if that Jeep were down at 7-foot maximum height, you'd still see Jeep, you'd still see the brown, you'd drive by, you'd never miss the fact that that was a Jeep dealership. And so if they don't like that, the ordinance is written so that we can bring it more in compliance with the ordinance. If they want to change, then it should be brought into compliance with the ordinance. If this board doesn't like the ordinance, that's a whole other issue. Then we need to address that issue. But the ZBA, I have no doubt in my mind that that would be turned down if it came before the ZBA. So that being said, unless this board makes a direction to the planning department to study and make these changes, as a ZBA member, I would have to vote no on both these changes as being requested today. The other changes, I don't have any problem with. I think it's a great upgrade, and I'm a major supporter of Chrysler and their Ford dealership and their Dodge dealership. And so bottom line is, I don't believe that they are going to, their business is going to be hurt if in fact this is not granted to them. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. You know, you're right, and you had mentioned something, and so did Trustee Smith. You know, I believe that I'm going to give direction to the Community Development Director to review the sign and lighting ordinance and bring back to the board for recommendation any potential modifications as a typical housekeeping thing that we do from time to time. You know, there wasn't LEDs around when a lot of this stuff was put together. The digital signs, that was another thing. Yeah, I remember when that first came out in Waterford, oh my God, no. All he said was no.
Yes.
And then now it's changed, and now it's just become commonplace. We have one in front of our own township hall. It's just part of the progression of technology. So we have to, from time to time, go back as a board and look at these different nuances in the ordinances, because again, you are absolutely correct. They go by the documentation that is before them, and they perform their duties based on that documentation. The Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission don't necessarily have the authority, or I should say, don't have the authority to change the ordinance. They can only put it forth before this board. However, I like to do something that, you know, has two worlds colliding, okay? It's called common sense and government, if you can imagine that. Okay? It's a George Costanza moment. Worlds colliding, okay?
This board likes common sense government, though,
Yeah.
so there you go.
So I really have a lot of faith, and I know this board does, in the administrative duties of the planning department and the community development director to make sure they get things right. I do have a motion that I would like to put forth, unless the further discussion by any of the board members.
Say a couple.
Yeah, comment.
I like, you know, having a UPS store in the past, every 10 years, by the franchise, we're supposed to go in, and if everything's got to be like the clock on the wall, and certain, you know, Sean's absolutely right. We're held to that standard, and I know, speaking with other dealers in the area, Feldman, LaFontaine, they're very strict and restrictive. And I think it's a beautiful design. I'm for it. We talk about the light pollution. I could go across the street that's been there for 30 years, Alpine Valley.
You see it from my house.
Yeah, and having the illumination with ZOTS, we're going to have,
Looks like the aurora
you know, you're going to be able to see, like with more lights, you're going to be able to see crime. I mean, we're lit up, and we don't have residential across the street, and I don't want to tie their hands. And I have full faith in our community development director. And to your point, Trustee Powell, then we need to address that. Laws change every day. The speed limit's 50 miles an hour out there. I'm going to guarantee everybody in this room might do 51, 52. So there's rules to the exception of that law. So
Strictly 50.
yeah, I mean, I'm hypothetically. So I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, I like it too. Reading on here, I couldn't figure out what LED was like. I'm like, LED, all I could picture was this really bright thing. Yes, we have pictures, but showing it up here with all the lights, Anthony, I was absolutely on the same page with you with the LED lighting. safety. That was my first thought.
And I've had a chance to go over to Lyon Township and check their site over there, and it's absolutely beautiful. And, driving at night, some people have a hard time seeing, and I'm one of them now as my age progresses, so I do not have a problem with it.
Don't admit that. Mr. Roman.
Yeah, I thought you all made great comments. I will say this, though, the LED is so far off the road anyway, and I think it looks great. I love it.
Yeah.
As far as that sign being that high, what I found interesting today as I was coming out here, as you approach Zot, as you're driving east, you're right, Mike Powell. If that sign was lower, you'd still see it. But as I kept going, that road kind of does this, and that sign almost disappeared in my rearview mirror. So if you're driving west, that height is probably needed in order to see it. Kind of an
Topography
interesting,
does change there.
an interesting topography. But
Very good.
that's all I had.
Any other comments?
No, thank you.
I do have one additional comment. So let's make sure that, I guess we have two different options. We could actually table this and direct the planning department to make the changes so that the signs do in fact comply with a zoning ordinance that we officially adopt. Otherwise, are you going to propose a lumens for the LED lighting, the maximum lumens that is going to be allowed?
5 billion.
You like Vegas,
Is that
I
enough?
can tell.
I like Vegas. Atlantic City.
The other question is, I'd be anxious to see what my colleagues would say. The next sign that comes into the ZBA, what do we do as a ZBA? Do we uphold the zoning ordinance, or do we say the board ipso facto decided that the zoning ordinance isn't valid anymore and we should comply with what the board did?
My answer to that would be if someone came in that I would tell them to hold off because it's going to be under review by the board and there probably will inevitably be changes. That would be my recommendation to anyone who makes a submittal.
So that would be for the planning
it.
department, so.
Written this way in Mandarin, okay?
So
Yes.
I too would like to see, in fairness to the ZBA, and give them the proper tools and direction that we update the ordinance.
Yes.
Just a comment.
Yes.
You know, we time and time again, we attempt to change our ordinances, and you really need to look at them closely, because in the past, in many instances, when we try to improve an ordinance, we actually shoot ourselves in the foot and create more problems with it. But that said, I support the change. I'd like to know from Zot what their time frame is. I'm not sure when they need this or when they don't.
Mr. Zot, can you come up? Or-
For my slow walking, I'm doing whatever. David Gasson with Partners in Architecture. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here tonight. A couple quick questions regarding timing. Right now, we're ready to go into the bidding phase. We're kind of surprised with the fact that we need to go through the process. It's kind of late in the process for us. So obviously, we'll zig and zag, but we're in the process of bidding right now to answer that question. Just a few clarifications based on your conversation, if I may. The LED is not a tube, it's a recessed element in the building wall, so it's in the flush in the plane of the wall, so that's one quick clarification. And the imaging of it, the light is meant to be a signal of the emergence in the future of electric vehicles in the marketplace. That's kind of the reason it's in the overall National Enhancement Program. And it really ties to the sign. The materials that are on the building are the materials that are on the sign. That's another element. And one of the really important factors of the light, it's key to the design in that they carry it out here at ZOD, is that there's some eligibility in doing this program enhancement that will allow ZOD to bring offerings of special and premium electric vehicles to the community. It's really a community enhancement that they'll be able to bring certain vehicles that other dealerships that aren't doing this won't be able to bring to the community. So I thought that was an important factor to bring up. And
Thank you.
Thad may want to add a few more comments to that.
Mr. Zott, anything you'd like to add?
Well, certainly I appreciate you guys and what you guys do. I know you guys are always in tough positions here, and we have great respect for everybody and their opinions as well. So we appreciate the time you've given us here. We appreciate the Planning Commission moving us along to you guys. And I'll just reiterate what David said is, this is a pretty cool project. I mean, this is the new Jeep image campaign. So, we'll be moving the Chrysler franchise down to Highland because this is kind of the CEO of Chrysler's baby. He's a Jeep guy at heart. He's put all his future investments in the brand and Jeep mainly. I mean, Chrysler's down to one brand, and the Jeep brand has 12 or so models and more coming. So the next phase of what we're doing right now is obviously we're transitioning in the automotive industry, right? We're going from combustion to hybrid to electric, and this image is really the big step into that world of the hybrid and electrification, and that's why you see, I think, some of the LED. It's an accent lighting. I know we're really getting into aluminums and tube lighting, and this is really and it is a soft. I know you don't want to hear the word soft. It is a soft accent to kind of project of where we're going in the world. I don't think the photometrics are going to change one iota when you go out there with a reader, whether we have that little light or not. I don't think it's even measurable. But from an aesthetic, presence, it's fantastic. And in the Great Lakes Business Center, I'll say nationally, there's about 700 people out of 26 or so 100 Chrysler dealerships that have applied for the Jeep image campaign. Of that, majority of those are actually Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram facilities, similar to our one in New Hudson. This is going to be one of the only true standalone Jeep dealers, right? There's no Chrysler, there's no Dodge, there's no Ram tied to it. I'll tell you, the Great Lakes Business Center, which is our region, Cincinnati and such, they're very excited about having this big, huge Jeep presence in the metro area. I know we're still rural out here, but they're enthusiastic that we're close enough to a metro where it's not tied to a Chrysler, Dodge, Ram facility because, like I said, the CEO is this is his baby. This is his design. This is his passion, and we're really excited about it. So I think there's about 3 dealers in Michigan that have applied for a Jeep only. Nobody has built one yet. We're probably going to be the first, for sure in Michigan, probably in the Midwest, with the new Jeep image campaign. Like David said, this is allowing us, of course, there's tons of requirements on us when it comes to charging stations and supporting the network of the electric vehicles that are coming in, but we do truly get models that other Jeep dealers will not get. If you don't do the image campaign, you get fed more vehicles because you have, obviously monetarily committed to it, and they want that image in that campaign. So not only will we get certain models that others won't, but we will also get more. And that's a huge benefit to our backyard. And it's going to be, they've already taken a whole bunch of pictures of this to show nationally right here from our White Lake dealership based on the drawing. So it's something we should be really proud of. We're really excited about it. We have a great relationship with you guys here in White Lake. I think you guys all know that. A lot of things we do hand in hand. I think you've helped us tremendously, and I think we brought a lot of positives to the community as well. I mean, I go down a laundry list of things that we do. I think you guys know most of them, but just to highlight a couple, we've done a lot with the Huron Valley Schools, the police station, the fire departments. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but that's an investment we do with the intention of giving back to the community that has also made us successful. This is going to continue to make us more successful, where we can do more of those programs with the community. We love being part of the community. We love giving back. We've been very grateful that the community's been so kind and helped us to grow, and certainly we want to continue to be successful and competitive. It's an extremely competitive environment out there. Here's one more notch for us to be successful in White Lake, and I think this image campaign is going to be something that we should be very proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have one more comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's our hope that, obviously from a timing standpoint, the question regarding schedules, that we can continue on the path and keep the momentum we have going. And considering the process, and I understand there's some coordination and cleanup and so forth of ordinance if you're making a decision that varies from your standards on the underlying district or zoning, but also from a planned business development, we're under the understanding you could offer a waiver for these two conditions, and that's really what we're hoping can happen tonight, and the continuation of how that filters through other parts of the ordinance is obviously an important factor too, but we're hoping for a decision tonight that will help us to keep moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a motion I'd like to make at this time. Mr. O'Neill, you're going to have to help me a little bit with this.
Can I help you in the on the front end
Yes,
of this?
you can.
Because so there's been some talk about brightness. The ordinance has standards for electronic message board signs. The problem is they refer to candelas, or they refer to them as nits with and there's a whole, Mike, you probably understand this, but it's candelas per square meter, which they call a nit. I don't know why, but they do. So it lists out the maximum number of nits that can be put out in a changeable, I should say, an electronic message board sign during the day and during the night. So we have a reference point, except for that when I look at their data that they've provided, the lumens are not measured in nits. They're measured
You need a
in lumens
conversion
per
table.
foot. So I don't know, I mean, if we could use this as a guide.
You want to Google that, Aaron?
Yeah, so I just want to let you know, we do have brightness standards for our signs, so if you want to make reference to that in section,
Yes.
Article 5.9, that's fine. The other thing is, if, and I see where this is going, I think it would be, if you're going to make an amendment to approve, I should say, make a motion to approve an amended plan development agreement, the cleanest way to do so might be to accept all of their proposed signage and lighting elements that were part of their plan. And, you can specify what those are. I would ask that the rock wall that's been proposed, which is something the planning commission really wanted to lessen the impact of the sign height, be required as is presented on this rendering, because I think it, not only does it look nicer, it brings the sign level down, and I think that is a material improvement. And I would also ask that you allow in this amendment language that allows the staff to make minor modifications in the future. Some of these things are not minor modifications, but there is not language that exists now.
Well, we'll take a stab at it here. I'd like to make a motion to allow the requested signage and lights as submitted, subject to administrative review, and allow the supervisor to sign the documents, as well as instructions for the review of the sign and light ordinance, and bring back to the board for a future recommendation of modification.
With the rock base?
With the rock base. No, that's for future projects, not this one. Okay, I'm just monumenting it so that we discussed it, that's all.
I'll support that.
Okay. Motion support?
Wait, let's make sure we're all clear on.
So I was talking about nits and lumens with Aaron, so I missed the first part of that. I apologize. I just.
Okay, let's try this again.
Thank you for looking that up.
You want to read that back?
What was Sean, I'm looking for the meeting minutes for the recommendation of the planning commission. Can't a motion simply adopt the recommendation of the planning commission with two changes, the changes being what they disagree with?
It could be. Their action was on the site plan where they pulled those elements in because they were part of the site plan. They're considering the development agreement, so that's not, I
Allow
would
the
probably.
changes to the development agreement in accordance, okay.
That was my
Yeah, you're right.
administrative changes. That's
So
what
Lisa,
I'm
it doesn't really line up
It
as
doesn't
cleanly?
line up.
Yeah. And again, this whole thing we tried to move this along quickly and found that there was more than we bargained for, but wanted to keep them on a path, or else we would have this fleshed out a little bit better.
I'm very comfortable with this motion.
Okay.
All right? Are you
I'm
in now?
fully.
Are you lumined in?
Yes, I am
Okay.
staring you down.
Okay, I will make a motion to allow the requested sign as submitted with the rock base, okay, and lighting as submitted, subject to administrative review, and allow the supervisor to sign all necessary documents. And your administrative review and adjustments of anything that you need to do internally for your housekeeping on this particular project.
I would add two things, that the amendment also include language for future minor modifications.
And to include future modifications to be allowed.
And I believe that in the document, the clerk signs it as well, so I'd ask you to add the clerk.
Clerk and the supervisor can sign.
I'll second it.
I have a motion.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Okay, you have your marching orders as far as doing some homework and doing some housekeeping on it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
A lot of stuff going on there. Okay. First reading of the Oxbow Lake Private Launch Association rezoning request.
You guys are going to be real tired of hearing from me by the end of this meeting.
I'm already.
You probably, yeah, I'd say, in fairness. So you have before you tonight both the first reading of the request to rezone from local business to planned development. You may remember this request because they were before you back in December, I believe, seeking a waiver to allow them to proceed through this process on a parcel that is less than 10 acres in size, which is a requirement by ordinance. They received the waiver from you after the Planning Commission made that recommendation. So they have a 1.91 acre parcel, and I'm gonna roll down to
Bigger than a
it.
postage stamp, but not much.
Yeah, it's definitely not all usable, and this is how it looks on the street. So there's a bit of a grade that goes from Lakeside and 59 down toward the water. So just to remind you, this is a project being brought forward by the OLPLA, which is the Oxbow Lake Riparian Group that has decided to pool their funds, create an organization, and fix their access problem. And I see Mr. Frank Bowers here who will, if you need him to, give you more information on the organization and what their goal is. But in a nutshell, they don't have a public access in this lake, and all the private access is done through homeowners allowing neighbors to really launch through their yards, which is not ideal for them, or they use the Sprader's parking lot, which is also not safe or ideal because it's a very small parcel and trying to maneuver through there is not a great situation, especially with all the volume of traffic on Elizabeth Lake Road. So, kudos to this group for solving this issue for themselves and getting together. The Planning Commission gave a recommendation for approval of the site plan, the preliminary site plan, as well as the rezoning that's being requested. There are very minor comments. As you can see here, it's really a paved access from Lakeside right into this launch area that is shown here. They're going to have all the required DEQ permits. They're going to have to get DEQ permits. There are a couple of elements. They don't want to put a sidewalk in. Doesn't seem necessary to me either. If this were a business, then that'd be a requirement. This is going to be seasonally used. Everyone's going to put their boats in the spring. They're going to take them out in the fall. They're going to have a gated access they're going to control. They are going to have a set of rules that are going to be pulled into the development agreement, which will allow us to enforce the rules if they choose not to, which is one of the reasons that this vehicle was the most appropriate, given the kind of requests that they're bringing forward, the nature of the requests they're bringing forward. They don't meet the fencing requirements of the ordinance, but fencing this off is important for safety and to control access, which is, pretty key. There's some minor landscaping around the perimeter that they're showing here on their plan, and public benefits. When we talk about planned business and planned development projects, they're required to give a public benefit. This is not a business. Again, this is a group of residents. So, from a public benefit standpoint, they're not a for-profit. So it's sort of a delicate ask or balance, and we don't really ask. We ask them to propose it to us. So as you can see, this hatched area that's labeled proposed township use easement, they are proposing, if approved, to give the township a roughly 25-foot by 125-foot rectangular parcel of land, really between Lakeside and where the M59 right-of-way kind of widens out where you see the word exception, and give us an easement that would allow us to use this property for a future pathway if we so chose to install one, or to put some park benches, things like that. For those of you who may have been involved with Parks and Rec a number of years ago, Andrew, you probably recall, this is one of the parcels that was kind of on the radar for Parks to possibly acquire because it was such a challenging piece of property. It was zone local business. I don't think any of us thought that it would be a good idea to put a commercial business on this piece of property. It wouldn't really fit. We would have all kinds of concerns and issues. And so this kind of puts to rest what the future use of this property will be. So I think that's sort of a benefit for all the lake owners at least. And, while the township won't be acquiring this land, as has been mentioned, this, few thousand square feet of dedication of an easement to us will still allow us to maybe make some small improvements to kind of further some of the goals of Parks and Recreation as a part of this request, as a part of their proposed community benefit. So at the staff level, we certainly don't have any issue with this request at all. We concur with the Planning Commission's findings, and, really, I guess in a nutshell, what's before you are two separate items. One is first reading of a rezoning from local business to plan development, and the second is approval of the preliminary site plan with conditions, and the conditions are really minor. Some of the things that I mentioned earlier as exceptions will be picked up in a development agreement, which eventually will find its way back to you after final site plan approval for your consideration. So that would be after the rezoning piece, that would be the last time you'd see it. So if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. O'Neill at this time? I think we covered a lot of stuff before, and we talked about this, and the uniqueness of this, and I don't want to elaborate any more than this, is that in a roundabout way, it's going to create an association on the lake, in a roundabout way. And there's nothing better than a group of people that are passionate about their water, because we just saw it earlier, okay? No, I'm serious. I'm paying them a compliment. I'm not being critical of them at all. I'm paying them a compliment. They care what happens, as you folks care what happens. So I think it's great, and I think this board realizes that. And Mr. O'Neill, after the first thought of it was maybe something a little out of the ordinary, but after this was started to be implemented in the proper manner and go through this procedure, I think it's coming together quite well. So I don't have any questions for the applicant. We've already been through this. I think it's great that we'll have an easement. One of the things we've been trying to do is get paths and directions. Well, we know someplace now we can at least do that. Won't get any feedback from anybody.
The one thing that was mentioned that I should add is that, this is very close to M59. So if there was an emergency response, someone falls through the ice, come up with any list of, we don't have an emergency boat. Usually we commandeer one or someone picks someone up. So this provides good emergency access. Otherwise, how, when police and fire are summoned to the lake for an emergency, where do they really meet someone? Where, this could improve an emergency response time to the lake. Makes a definitive
point to meet people if somebody has a problem.
And I wanted to mention that, not only will they have access to this through a Knox box that will be located here, but it will provide them access onto the lake in the event of an emergency, which was one of the items that Mr. Bowers brought up during the Planning Commission. While that may not be looked at by some as a public benefit, I think it is a public benefit, because right now, again, where do you go? Where's our good, safe access for emergency responders to get on the lake in the event that they need to? Now, hopefully they don't ever have to go out here, but if they do, this is a pretty easy and identifiable place to access.
Chief Holland, Chief Keller, agree with that? Okay. Thumbs up. Okay.
Can I ask a quick procedural
Sure.
question? Just to be clear, Sean, the reason this body doesn't have public hearings is because the public hearings are held at the Planning Commission?
That is correct, both in the case of, a rezoning or a special land use, which I just wanted to mention it, but this is a rezoning request, and because it's a PD is the vehicle they've chosen, it's sort of tie-barred to their site plan. So that's.
Nobody appeared and objected to it, it sounds like.
I have not heard an objection from anyone. As a matter of fact, the room was filled with people at the Planning Commission who were saying very supportive things. I didn't receive any, I don't recall anyone being upset at all by this.
It's a purposeful project, and it definitely makes it easier because, as we all know, being dependent on someone else for access can be quirky, and Spraders is one fire or car going through the bar or tornado or something away from not being there because it's legal non-conforming. And am I correct on that?
Yeah,
and therefore it can't be a reliable access point long term.
Projects don't get much easier than this. When everyone loves it and it's on a lake. I mean, when something's going on a lake, nobody generally loves it. They're usually lining up to say they don't want it because it's going to have an impact, for a myriad of reasons. And so this is quite the opposite. So it was, for us, nice to see a group of people come together who wouldn't have necessarily come together otherwise and solve a problem that they had in common. And
I got to give Frank and Rick and others a lot of credit for moving it forward. Any further questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Powell, would you make a motion?
I would. Mr. Supervisor, and I'll separate them because they're separated on the new business. I move to approve the preliminary site plan for Oxbow Lake Private Launch Association as presented.
I will second that. So we have motion, we have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Continue.
I move that the board move the rezoning request from, I think it's from local business to PD to second reading.
Looking for support? Support. I have support from Mr. Ruggles. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Carry on, folks. Thank you very much for your project. Okay. Okay. Item E, Resolution 22003, tentatively declaring its intention to establish a special assessment district to be known as emergency sewer hookup. We do this from time to time, as you know, because we had our emergency sewer hookup program. We have 6 properties, so this is something that we do, I think, generally about twice a year. So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt a resolution 22003. Looking for support?
Support.
I have motion and support. Mr. Powell.
I continue to put a bug in this board's ear to continue this same process. It can be this easy to establish a voluntary special assessment district for anyone that wants to tap the sanitary sewer, not just on an emergency basis. There are so many pros. We would get more flow into our sanitary sewer system. The entire system would be upgraded, and we would provide a vehicle for residents to connect into the sanitary sewer and allow for a 10-year payoff of that. Bottom line is, we can do it this easily on an emergency basis. We should make it township-wide to invite anybody that wants to connect into the sanitary instead of just on an emergency basis.
Just got to figure out how to fund it.
Yeah, you're talking about funding everybody that wants to.
It's funded very easy, just like a regular special assessment district. If you were extending a sanitary sewer, you'd sell bonds to maybe make that happen. It's done exactly the same way. You sell bonds in order to establish, in order to get the funds to allow people to connect into the sanitary as well. Same way.
We need to have this at our sewer conversation.
And I'm ready, anytime. No, I'm not ready. It's going to take a couple weeks before
I know,
I'm
you're
ready.
going out of town again. Counselor?
Just for the benefit of the public, as with all SADs, this resolution that you just passed schedules a public hearing for the establishment of the district for March 15th, the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Is that confirmation of the role? Is that what that is?
Nope, the first step is establishing the district, and then there will be a public hearing for confirmation of the
And then
role
we- then
in
we
a
can-
subsequent meeting.
And we can do that.
I just like hearing you explain it.
We can do that the same. That can be
Sorry.
And
simultaneous.
when will the pipe go in the ground?
No, there's time between. We should do it a month after.
Oh, okay, so it's, so,
Process usually.
oh, that's right, yeah, sorry.
All right, so that carried.
It's
Thank you
already-
very
already
much.
hooked
Okay, did we get,
20
we did get the
minutes.
ayes.
Did you make the motion? Did we get support?
You know, he does this to me from time to time.
You made the motion, yeah?
No, but I
Rick
will.
made the,
I made the motion.
Yes.
Okay. And
Was your
Andrea
support?
supported. And then you put your hand up. So all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Moving on. Okay, thank you. Request by fire department to hire executive secretary. Chief, you might want to come up here. I know that you have been busy with a lot of administrative duties.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. Boy, long time no see. I feel like we just met recently. Yeah, what you have before you is a request for approval for an executive secretary to the fire department. Pretty much it's me and the fire marshal. I think we're the only functioning department within the township that does not have any administrative assistance. And it is really, it bogs both of us down. I put a lot on my fire marshal. So this is something that really does need to happen. And the expectation of the work really is high. So that's why I want an executive secretary. This person has to be able to work unsupervised. And a lot of times when I'm not there. And it's really going to be a big assistance to sharing the building department with the rental property ordinance. It's going to assist in that fashion too. And I want it to be an attractive position. I mean, I know Mr. O'Neill read the job description, and he's actually expressed some interest in it too. Looks like a pretty good position there, so. Do you guys have any questions for me with this? I think it's pretty straightforward.
You've had this position before. It was just COVID made some changes in how things operated, and
That's correct. That was what Chief Marinucci had. You know, I really can't speak to what his idea was, but I know it was during COVID when we really weren't working. A lot of the township employees weren't working. They were working from home. There was no way our previous secretary could work from home. So rather than pay her a wage and benefits, it was easier just to dissolve the position and let her be absorbed by another department within the township, and then kind of revisit this at a later time, which I'm doing now.
okay, very good.
So we don't have, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So we don't have a position established, that it just needs to be filled?
It just needs to be filled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do we have
The fire
to?
department has,
Oh, because there's a job description in here.
yes.
Okay, all
It
right.
just goes through there. It's a job
All right.
description, but the position has been there, which just wasn't filled.
So it's not budgeted at this point either?
You have, your budget, you have a budget, John?
Yeah, and I worked really close with Kathy on this.
Okay.
And once we made the decision, and then she sat with Elaine, and my budget will support the position.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, I was just curious, Chief, where are you going to house this person?
With the fire marshal in that big office,
Okay.
right next to him.
Does that mean you're moving out, or?
Is that, no, I'm in the other office.
Oh, you're in the other one?
I'm in the other, she'll be with the fire marshal, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room back there. Okay.
Yeah, the phone system's already set up here. It'd be a lot more conducive for that, so.
Any other questions? Looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Please do.
approve the request by the fire department to hire an executive secretary.
A motion, looking for support? Support. I have support from Mr. Noble. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Request to approve May tenant agreement. Kathy? First of all, I'd like to thank you for all your time and efforts that you have put into this and all these contracts and working with us trying to get everything on the same clock, so to speak, over the last couple of years, so.
Thank you. Well, we're moving right along. We passed the Firefighters Contract, the IAFF, back in December, so that group has been, that contract has been resolved. We now met with the MAPE group, which is the Michigan Association of Public Employees. Those are general township employees that fall under this group. Again, we've established a 4-year agreement. That's the tentative agreement you see in front of you. I provided a red line document behind it if you need to reference that, but really the 3-page summary is a little easier to follow. Some of the key points in that would be the modernization of the healthcare plan, just like we did with the firefighters group. We have the 2 plans that we are offering to our employees, both the HMO and the PPO. Employees will have a choice between the 2. Those won't go into effect until open enrollment, which will be done in May. So it's just a more concise time to handle that change. We've also added a long-term disability plan, which we've never had before. It's a real benefit to our employees. If they were in a position where they needed to be off for more than 6 months, there is a benefit that, that provides them some financial well-being while they're off. In addition to that, we've also made some changes in the vacation time. This board has been very clear in its message that they'd like to have some more family-friendly benefits. So we've increased the vacation days by 2 days for each tier, in addition to 5 days at date of hire. So we've made those changes as well. We've also done some things for the township that will give us some greater flexibility, and those are primarily with the ability to hire part-time employees, permanent part-time employees. Currently, we only have 1 permanent part-time employee. She's in the assessing department. This just gives us the flexibility going forward if we should need to fill in some gaps, but not necessarily hire a full-time employee. With this being a 4-year contract, we're trying to see long-term.
Yeah, that's a significant, helpful tool.
Yeah, I think so. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Roman?
The part-time issue, what is the pay rate for that?
That would depend on the position itself. That could be determined, right now we have a flat rate that we pay the majority of our employees. However, that can be adjusted based on the supervisor's recommendation and the requirements of the job, really.
Does the board have to approve those salaries?
No, they do need to approve the budget, so that has to be absorbed within the budget somehow, but the supervisor has the ability to set the pay
That would
scale.
mean he could approve $100 an hour. Not that he would, but I think that's wrong. I think it actually puts Rick in a tough position.
Well, these are part-time positions, and what would happen is that we wouldn't see anything that would be excessive in each department. And it would be the recommendation of the department head, such as if you needed temporary staff during tax time, we would look at what your pay scale is for the particular degree of what that person is going to doing and make a comparable adjustment. The scale's pretty well spelled out, and it would be done. And we can't have more than 35% of our staff per the union agreement, correct?
Correct.
As part-time anyway. So this really just kind of sets things up to work a little bit more in line with what we're doing. If you need part-time help during an election, if you need part-time help during tax time, whatever that particular incident or case may be, we're going to have part-time people coming in here doing grounds maintenance this summer. So we need to have that flexibility. And I think this is, it's spelled out, the wages are spelled out in those categories, and the department heads would be the ones that could sit there and say, hey, I have someone that's a beginner, they'll fall at this level. I have somebody that has top-notch 20 years experience, they'll fit in this level. And I really believe I would rather leave that up to the department heads and just adhere to the pay scale that we currently have.
Well, as long as the board knows and understands, I just wanted you to all know.
Because every time they'd want to hire somebody, they'd have to come back to the board, and it would just would be problematic. It just doesn't make sense. So from that standpoint, so.
Kathy, I have a question. As long as we keep the hours under 1,500 hours per, I guess it'd be the open cares, or not open cares, but the healthcare, we don't have to pay the benefits, correct?
Correct. Usually we go with 30 hours a week or less.
Yes, we want to keep that under, then we could just establish a salary per, like the paid on call or part-time firefighters that we just established, correct?
Well, those are unionized positions, so the part-time positions would not be.
Okay.
And generally, just so that you know, Mike, we have developed a job description for permanent part-time people so that those can be presented to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Powell.
How many employees are covered under this agreement?
20.
20? And each one of those employees is going to get let me ask another question. Has this agreement been ratified by that union?
It has.
Okay, so they will all receive the one-time payment?
With board approval. We're bringing the tentative agreement to you for approval.
All right, and then the next question is, if that's done, that one-time payment is taken out of the budget of the department that they work in?
I believe that's where it comes from.
There's no budget amendment necessary to make that happen?
That I can't answer. I mean, we didn't have the wage increases established when the budget was set in October, so.
I don't believe there will not be necessary. It'll be necessary.
Okay, thank you.
At this point in time, we're running fairly well on percentages on our budgets.
Okay.
So, and again, a little give and take, and right now, the job market is as such as I would like to, instead of give, take, I like to keep. So,
absolutely.
And this is something that's important to this board and this township as a whole, to have this continuity that we've been able to have here. We actually have got a pretty good tuned-in machine right now. I don't want to jinx it, so, but, I think it's working, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'd like to thank Kathy and Brandon for
Brandon.
Getting it.
Yeah, Brandon.
squared
He
away
did
really-
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Working together and getting this pushed along and keeping us together, because I know it was separated in the years past, so it's important to keep them all together and doing these contracts. Thank you.
Okay, that being said, I will, yes.
Is this the one, Andrea?
Yes.
So this is the one you want to just disclose?
Yes. As we all know, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong one. My husband was just newly elected, newly hired by White Lake Township. I personally feel the need, since he's a newer employee, to abstain from conversation and or vote.
I don't believe there's a conflict of interest, okay, at all.
Okay. I just wanted to put it out there.
Because this was the process was as any other employee, so no particulars of anything.
I
might feel like
did
there's
offer an
conflict.
opinion. Yeah, but that there's no conflict and she doesn't need to abstain, but if she wants to, with unanimous consent of the board, she can.
Are you choosing to?
I would like to.
Well, then-
Just because he's a newly elected.
All right, well then,
a newly appointed.
all of those will allow Andrea Voorhees to abstain, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
You will vote.
Let me put it this way. If there's any conflict at all, it's going to be when we vote on our own agreement, our own increases. So her husband is one thing, but we're going to be voting on our own. Then we should all abstain, and there'll be no vote at all.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Powell, and that's why I don't think there's any issue here.
Correct. I don't agree.
But he was newly hired, that's how I felt.
I'm
That
good
being-
with her voting.
May I-
Andrea, we respect
May I
your
proceed?
Right, if she wants
Well,
to.
I understand.
But it has to be unanimous.
Unanimous,
So
so
she
you
has
have to.
She has to
I agree.
vote,
You
yeah.
got it.
I messed.
He threw the
yeah, messed
dice
it up.
out, okay.
That's fine.
Pulled the trump card, okay.
That's right.
Okay, okay, that being said, I would, any further questions before I proceed? Okay. That being said, I would like to make a motion for the township to approve the tentative agreement from January 28, 2022 with the Michigan Association of Public Employees. Looking for support.
Support.
I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. There we go. Non-union employee wage resolution, Resolution 22006. Anything you want to add to this, Kathy? You may as well hang around for a little bit.
Do you
Okay.
have any questions?
Just number of employees, if you have it.
The non-union,
4 years, I was like, oh.
about 10,
That would include the deputies?
yes.
Plus or minus. Any questions from the board?
Basically, it mirrors the MAPE contract. So
Yes.
it provides those employees that are not under the union contract to get the same benefits, or the same pay increases on the same schedule. This does exclude the elected officials. You have your own resolution.
Any questions from the board? I'd like to make a motion to approve and allow the clerk to sign the agreement.
Support.
Resolution 22006. I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 3, resolution elected wage officials. It is, as this has done here historically since the Stone Age, it is mirroring it. Hey, you know what? We don't get that $750. What's the deal? Okay.
We don't get
I'm
retroactive
going to
either.
blame that on John. So, yeah. So,
Oh, is it not?
yeah. Anyways, nonetheless, any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Powell.
Oh, really? Okay. Mr. Supervisor, I move approval of Resolution 22-008 as presented.
Seeing as we have a vehicle here that we have all gone back and forth on so many times, and we really don't want to do other things, it seems, I don't want to even get into that conversation right now. The lesser of the evils, as we'll say? Okay.
Yes.
I'm looking, resolution number 22008, I have a motion on the floor, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mr. Roman. Roll call vote.
Trustee Voorhees, are you abstaining from this?
No.
Okay. Trustee Voorhees,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
No.
Trustee Powell,
Yes.
Trustee Ruggles,
Yes.
Treasurer Roman,
Yes.
Supervisor Kowal,
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. The non-union elected official health insurance resolution, we are, through these processes, going to save the township a considerable amount of money and allow the options to be sought by employees. They can go to an HMO or a PPO, and their deductible will adjust accordingly. And it is a significant number. I can't remember it to the dime, but it's in the 200 plus.
It'll be based on enrollment and of course
Right, it
from year
depends
to
on the
year.
final enrollment.
Is that 200 a month per
No,
family?
annually 200,000.
Oh, that's different.
Upwards to 222.
Yeah. So
Again,
it's
depending on how many.
depending on the enrollment. It's a significant savings to the township.
Do we know what the premium difference is for family, roughly?
Family versus what, two-person or
think
single?
he's-
No. HMO versus PPO.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have it on me,
have
no. You know, and from year to year, that can change, Mike, so we don't have our rate renewals
Yeah, I
yet.
was just looking for a rough number.
Their PPO is a little more, therefore they'll pay a little bit more towards it.
Yeah.
And their deductible.
No, I think it's a good move.
It's
I like
a
it.
very prudent
So,
move, and
it's a
we'll look
win-win.
into
It's a
this.
win for the employees, it's a win for the town.
Exactly. It gives you an option.
I have a question, Mr. Supervisor, and let me read it. It just says, "Now therefore be it resolved that the eligible non-union personnel and elected officials," now the trustees are elected officials. The way this is worded, does that mean the trustees are going to have the options as well?
Actually, the word eligible refers to both non-union personnel and elected officials, and you're only eligible if you're a full-time employee or official.
Right, so the trustees
So-
are not eligible.
So maybe the word eligible should go in both places.
I think so, yes, because otherwise, we are elected officials. So I'm going to suggest that
Good
be
catch there,
modified.
Mr. Powell.
Either that or I'll take it.
Where do you want to add that, Counselor?
It goes right
Second to the last line.
here, under the now therefore be it resolved that eligible non-union personnel, and you're going to add the word eligible elected officials. Right here,
Personnel
after the and.
and eligible.
So the resolution can be
Okay.
adopted as amended.
Resolution number 22009, proposed to move forward and adopt as amended. Looking for support.
Support.
I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. I think we made it down the list. Kathy, I think you,
You're under policies and procedures.
yeah. I'm going to declare a 5-minute intermission.
Thought you were going to declare an emergency, a weather emergency.
I'm working on that. No, there's reasons for that.
75, and my nose is
Feels good in here.
I don't remember an agenda this long ever. Tea?
Oh, this is nothing compared to the ZBAs.
Is it really?
Oh,
Yeah.
our record is 1:05 in the morning.
Cushy, so they.
Mike, when I was on that, I had a record, it was 15 minutes.
You know how much I talk.
Yes.
Those pay increases. For planning commission.
We are, I think our
I've been
latest was when we
been
rented
howling
out
for years. What?
That's a great point.
You may pay more.
My poor dog is home alone. Come on, people.
I'm pretty
Isn't that a
sure.
movie?
We were there very
Do you
late.
cage your dog, or does he have run of the house? Aw. We've never done that. We've always given run of the house.
So I don't mind giving her run of the house, but I have a Furbo, one of those cameras. A doggy Furbo.
Oh, so you need it in the cage so that you can see him?
No.
Want to eat like Paul's candy?
I
Yeah, I
put
think
the
so.
Furbo
I think it's
on,
time, don't you?
and I tested it.
I already ate
and
one
left
and
her
I'm gonna eat
without
two,
putting
because it's
it in the
delicious.
crate. She
They all the same.
yelled
I think so.
cried
I think
like a
there's-
murder.
Oh, she likes the cage then.
This is like
I don't
everywhere
know, I
now.
would prefer if she would be able to roam and do what she
Yeah,
wants.
just leave the door open.
Jamie enough?
We've tried it both ways. Like, we literally went out to dinner. I put the Furbo, while we were going out to dinner with friends. We put the Furbo on, we got to the end of the street and she was,
I know, I agree.
never
It'll be
heard
fun.
noises like this before in my life. I said, Michael, we gotta go back. Like, I can't. We went back home, put her in her crate, drove away.
Our mic's off.
I know, I hate that, but.
Every dog's different.
Had one.
Thanks, everyone.
Agree.
Moving on to item K, request to amend the township policy and procedure to add a severe weather closing day. This came about because we've had instances over the years where we've had to close the township, and we just wanted to kind of have it called out because we really didn't have one. In all our policies and procedures, we really didn't have something proper. Kathy, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I like it just the way it is.
Okay. So it's really kind of simple, and it just allows, it just clears it up so that when we can dismiss and then it doesn't cause a problem for anyone. So say, for example, at the last minute, we have an individual that maybe does not feel confident driving. They're very uncomfortable, but somebody like me will drive through 4 feet of snow and it doesn't bother me. But there's other people, they're uncomfortable if they have a vacation day or personal day or whatever. This won't penalize them for using that, and I don't want them to be penalized for it, so it'll give them the option. Because under our normal policy, they have to give notice, like advance notice to use these days. So it's gonna, if it snows 8 inches tomorrow morning, how much advance notice can they possibly give us? So it was one of those things that we did, and we looked at it and went, okay. So this corrects it. That's all it is. Any questions?
Yeah, if I could ask a question on this. Now, you spelled it out very clearly in the first paragraph, if they decide not to come in. When you declare an emergency, and I'm not sure why we would go after the governor for her statement of emergency, but if you declared an emergency, how is that covered in the budget and or in their employment policy? That is a free day for them? It's like a day off school, only you don't have to make up homework?
Yes, more or less it is, yes.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
That is how traditionally it has been done.
Okay.
Mr. Potter?
One of the issues that we have when we have a large snow event are the employee cars in the parking lot. It makes it impossible for us to remove the snow. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, so when they're not here, we can actually get the lot cleaned.
Stay home so we can shovel?
Well, it happens.
Just clean it after they go?
Pardon?
Can't you just clean it after they're gone?
Yes and no, depends on the event. If it's snowing like crazy like it was the other day, we can't have 4 inches of snow in the parking lot during the course of business. We have elderly people coming through the lot. They slip and fall, we have an issue. So if we have a situation where we need to get people moved, their cars moved, I'm not going to bring that up. I was going to put elderly and Mike Powell in the same
exactly.
but that's what happens. So it's just one of those things we just have to be aware of and do the best we can to deal with it. That's it. So it is what it is. And if we're in operation of the course of day, for example, we had one day I dismissed everyone 1 hour early on that one day because to try to beat the traffic. So everybody just shifted out 1 hour early that day. And I will tell you that there was not a single employee that didn't appreciate it because I got out ahead of the traffic.
Absolutely.
And we got to clean the lot an hour earlier, so we don't have to have people all night long doing it.
It's not just this lot either. We have
multiple lots.
Probably 20 sites that we have to plow.
Yeah.
We have 3 plow trucks total.
Any further questions or comments?
Yeah, if there's a, say another event like the tornado and the supervisor's unavailable, should there be somebody else designated to handle the responsibility?
Clerk. Mr. O'Neill is my emergency contact, but policy and procedure-wise, Mr. Clerk would be the one.
Oh, yeah. I just didn't see it in this.
I have been here for all weather events.
Okay.
Appointed to the emergency team for the county now?
Correct.
So
Correct. Yep.
Did you know that?
No.
Yes. Yeah, after our weather event, Mr. O'Neill was harvested by Homeland Security. So, and it was a good connection for the township, and it was a good move on our part, so. All right, anything else?
You need a motion?
I need a motion.
Motion to approve your new weather procedures.
Motion?
Severe weather procedures.
Thank you. So look, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution 22002, Special Event Liquor License Request Park and Recreation Committee. We have the opportunity to have a little bit of fun in the park, and we got, I guess it can be a little concert type of thing, very small, more of a folk type thing, not a acid rock band thing. And they want to be able to have, I think, beer and wine and just kind of have a friendly family atmosphere and adhere to all liquor license requirements. And we have had discussion with our insurance carrier, and there's no issues there, although they will probably have a separate, you'll inform us as to what they're going to do, so.
Yeah, I don't know that the event is completely ironed out. I know that it's targeted to be a family-friendly event. The only thing that's not in this, and we're going to add it later, is Justin's got to spend the entire day in the dunk tank. That'd be a great fundraiser, I think, having him in there.
I'll donate.
So if we could add that to the motion, it's just going to be a surprise for him tomorrow.
As the Parks and Rec liaison, we nominated you, Sean.
Oh, I'm unavailable. I've got some emergency management training that day. I already looked at my calendar.
Perfect.
But unfortunately, or else, I would have been there. But I think it is fair to say, though, they're not 100% certain they want to serve beer and wine. They're pretty sure they do as an option, but they need this resolution in order to have it available to them.
We just need, according to Justin, we just need to get this done. It may not even be utilized. If anything, we're going to be out $50. Because it's like, our February meeting was the first time we've actually ever talked about it. Remember, Kathy Esseltine has been very instrumental in doing all the work. So if anything, I expect to see all our board members there if this event does go through to support the community. We're trying to keep it low key, but not do a lot. Honestly, I would love to say we'll have a dunk tank with Sean in it, but we probably won't. It'd be fun. But yeah, just low key, starting off and going from there. And we're gonna have it at Holly Park right outside here with the thoughts of it going to Stanley Park.
And as he's used to doing so, Justin was kind enough to include some language for a motion, potential motion, if you chose to take it up. He does this with the ZBA, and they seem to like it, so.
Andrew, would like to
absolutely
move this along?
Absolutely.
Anybody have any questions yet? Anything else?
No, it seems like the appropriate time. It'll take months to get the approval from the
Right.
Liquor Control Commission.
Maybe you can consult.
It's going to have to get moved to July, probably.
From the back.
So I'd like to move to approve the attached resolution supporting the application of a one-day liquor license from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission for sale of beer and wine at the summer event on June 25th, 2022. The supervisor, clerk, and staff are authorized to sign the necessary documents associated with the application.
Resolution number 22.
Resolution 22002.
And I will support that.
Thank you.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see what's going to go on here. The next item is the engineering services proposal for Stanley Park. We have acquired our additional grant. We don't have the funds yet, but we've been approved, so we would like to start moving forward. This actually, I took a stab guess at this a long time ago at what the cost of this was going to be, and I was $5,000 off. So I was no surprise. It's going to be a large project. There's going to be a lot of things involved. There's going to be a lot of details ironed out. It's exciting, and it's really great that we'll be able to start moving on this. I don't believe we'll see those monies until the end of this year, but that means next summer, a year from now, we'll be warming up the shovels and starting to get going in a year from this spring. So I'm moving in the right direction. Mr.
Can I
Yes.
make a suggestion?
Sure.
I wasn't asked to review the contract, but I do notice that they indicate in here that they will handle the bidding and award procedures. It likely should be in accordance with the township's procurement policy, because we do have things in there such as the requirement that they not be an Iran-linked business and non-discrimination issues that, as a local government, you need to comply with.
Yes, I'm sure they're quite well aware of that, although we can add that language if it sure makes you feel more comfortable, since they do work with multiple municipalities, and I believe that they have that awareness. So, but let's get to any questions that the board might have at this time. Mr. Powell.
Mr. Supervisor, I read in the introduction letter that this is as it reads, it says not to exceed, I think, $125,000. I believe, however, the revised letter from Beckett and Rader divides that in two to allow this township board, because quite frankly, our consultants haven't been very good in updating this board, the progress that occurs in projects like this. And so I thought for sure there was a modification of this engagement letter that says after after sections 1, 2, and 3, Beckett Rader were going to provide us with a presentation and documents as to what had been done under phases 1, 2, and 3 and bring us up to date before the Township Board authorized it to be continued.
It is in there.
It is in there. I can't find it in
I
my
read it
downloaded
earlier,
copy
and-
here, so.
We were talking about that.
So I think it's somewhere in 6. Brian Barrick is here from Beckett and Rader, and he is the author. But I'm scrolling around through here, and it does involve that coming back to the Township Board. Brian, I'm scrolling right past it, I think. Oh, 3.4, Township Board of Trustees approval. So, Mr. Powell, the request that you had made was, it was just modified a couple of days ago, and so it's in 3.4, but I missed it. I scrolled past it twice, too, when you were asking.
So is there a definitive cost difference, cost up to the task 3, and then what the additional cost would be if the Township Board authorized the continuation?
We have not separated that cost, no.
So you have not? Okay.
I would ask that maybe, in many contracts, the tasks are broken out by number, and there's an associated dollar amount with it. Ryan, is that something that you'd be able to provide us?
It is, and if you scroll, I believe if you scroll further down, there should be a, oh, nope, it's not included in that copy. But yes, that is something that we can do. If the board would wish to authorize the contract, we can essentially develop a schedule of values that divides that cost out by task.
And I can leave that to the administration, but I don't feel comfortable in authorizing the full $125,000 before we see what we're actually implementing after task 3. So I would appreciate that.
Like in every contract, when they come in, they generally come into our office, we sign off saying it's met that milestone.
Right.
And then it will go to the supervisor's office prior to being paid, because these are larger dollar amounts. And if it's approved, whether that's necessary or not, I don't know. I just prefer to have the supervisor look at it as well and sign off. So that is how I would propose that we handle this.
Actually, I'd like it to be a little bit different step than that. I'd like the presentation be made to this Township Board. I'd like to be involved in what is being proposed before this board authorizes to go beyond task 3.
Just to be clear, I meant from a paying of invoices through the steps process.
Okay.
As every step and every task is completed, that's how we would sign off on it. But to your point, I mean, that's exactly what this is laid out to be, which is a trip back here to give a presentation to you.
Yes, 3.4 specifically says that.
I understand that, but I was getting mixed signals, so.
And I apologize if I...
I think you're both saying the same thing.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
So
Any
just,
other questions?
I was just going to say the Parks Committee is in support of this. They made a recommendation in January to move this along, and Andrea may want to speak to that too, but this is in line with what they expected.
Yep.
And, Beckett Rader has a history of doing these types of projects for the township very successfully. So I think the committee felt very comfortable in moving ahead with this contract, and I would share in that sentiment as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Andrea?
No, I agree with Sean. I like Beckett Rader, but, and we all do as a Parks and Rec.
He was asking you to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, both
I'm sorry,
comment
Andrew, what
and,
did you say, though?
and motion.
I didn't hear what your comment
No,
was.
we as Parks and Rec have, like Beckett Rader and Brian. I almost called you Brian Beckett, so sorry. I upgraded you.
Wrong guy.
It happens more often than you might think.
And make a motion.
Okay. So I'd like to move to authorize engaging Beckett Rader to complete design and engineering services for Stanley Park Phase 1 development with cost not to exceed $125,000 to be paid from the Parks and Recreation Fund. The supervisor is authorized to sign the consulting services proposal.
And follow the guideline as submitted,
Follow the gun on this.
which goes to 3.4 and calls it out. I will support that motion. Roll call vote?
Supervisor Colwell?
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes. Treasurer Roman?
Yes.
Trustee Ruggles?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Voorhees?
Yes.
And Trustee Powell?
Yes.
Thank you. Request to approve DLZ proposal 2022 wellhead.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. For wellhead protection program plant, well, it's that time of year again. And as we are involved in the wellhead protection program because the state wants us to be, and it's not a bad thing to be, and our groundwater in this community all comes from wells, whether or not all of the individuals out there know that in the audience and on our television audience, our groundwater, this community is a 100% groundwater drawn community. And that's where we get it. So we've got to take care of what goes around it. And if you have anything you want to add to that, Mr. Potter?
You've covered a lot of it. We participated in this plan since at least 1997, as far back as I could find. Over the years, this is a 50% matching grant program with the state of Michigan that helps groundwater systems identify and protect areas of the township that contribute groundwater to our municipal well system. So we would like to continue on with this. This proposal specifically is to develop a contingency plan, an emergency response plan for our capture zones. And this works basically along with what we've done on previous grant cycles and takes a lot of that information and actually compiles it into a usable plan. I request the board to approve the proposal and designate either myself or the township supervisor to authorize this as a signatory. Just one last thing, this is included in my township budget for 2022. This was also included in our grant application to the state of Michigan that was approved.
Right, yeah, which is good. And we've, as you can see, these posters here, these are kind of types of things that qualify. I've had folks come in the township hall and walk over and look at it and go, that's pretty cool. And then they start asking questions, especially new residents that come in because well, I'm on city water. Okay, city water comes from a well. Oh, it doesn't come from Detroit? No, we're not part of Gliwa. So we have to explain that to them. And that's why the importance of preserving our lakes and our aquifer are so important to this community because I don't care who you are, you live in it, you work in it, you play in it, you're drinking it. So it's super important. So I'm real proud of this program.
We do go through a lot of hassle in this township, and some of our neighboring communities also do as well to own and operate our own source of water for our township water systems. However, the benefits, when you have an abundant source of water in the ground, the benefits come through in the rates. Our rates are some of the lowest rates in all of Oakland County, and there isn't a Gliwa system out there that can even touch our rates. I mean, we're half.
Yeah, I know. So, Mr. Powell.
I'm very surprised that we haven't concluded this program to this point, and it's absolutely necessary. And I think Aaron will support me in the fact that I had mentioned to the lake people that one of the ways the federal government is asking us to treat stormwater is perking it into the ground. But that is in direct conflict when we're in a wellhead protection area, because you have to take that water and make sure it's clean before you drop into the ground so you don't contaminate the water that's being drawn for our municipal wells. And so it has to be very carefully coordinated, so this is really, really important.
A delicate dance.
Yes.
And it's been very informative, and I remember the very first meetings that I sat in on, I learned a lot of things, and some of the stuff scared the bejeebers out of me. Like when they show you, where there's potential problems everywhere. And then you really realize that, every community has a certain number of issues in areas, some of them more than others, and then other ones have potential problems. Well, for example, not everyone would think that the airport, international airport, would potentially have a problem, but it potentially has problems, and there is some PFAS over there from the firefighting equipment over the years that they've dealt with. There's some fuel residual that they've had to deal with. Things that years ago no one just really thought about. It was just commonplace to go out and do it. Just like when I was a kid in Detroit, I used to go out, and my dad would say, well, go take care of the trash. You go out in the trash in the backyard, and you had his burn can, and you go out there and you burn the trash off. That's what you did.
Yeah.
And now we look at things differently. And again, it's the evolution of our knowledge in our environment and the importance of it in our community. And I really appreciate you're being very vigilant about this. And Mike, I like working with you on these types of things, and it's great to educate people about it. And we always like to use our Home Has Day to enlighten people, and that is, when is it this year? The 5th?
June
5th?
Something like that?
Yeah, I think we'll double check and get that out there, just on the top of my head. So that's, it's a good time to do it. Okay, Mr. Powell, care to make a motion?
Absolutely, Mr. Supervisor. If I can get to the top of this thing for Mr. Potters. I move the Township Board approve the proposal submitted by DLZ for the groundwater response plan and the wellhead protection plan, and authorize the Township Supervisor to sign the documents as necessary.
Looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Mr. Noble. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We want to make a little amendment to our emergency sewer SAD connection. It's a great program that we have. As you know, you just saw the other SAD that was assembled of the 6 properties before us. And what we wanted to do is just make it real clear what the ineligible what the difference between eligible and ineligible costs. So what the DPS would like to do is just reduce the ineligible, boy, I'm having problems there, ineligible cost just to the design fee of $650.
Yeah, that's correct. So since I started here in 2016, we've been working off the assumption that the procedure included ineligible costs, because that's what my predecessor was doing. And some of the other department heads also had this assumption that design fee, abandonment of the septic tank, and the inspection fee of $330 totaled up to about $1,200 worth of ineligible costs had to be paid by the customers in order to participate in the emergency connection SAD. Now, in addition to that, customers, because it's private property, also have to hire an electrician to supply power to the grinder station panel, which is 240. So we started looking into this, and really wasn't able to find any of that discussion in any of the minutes or the resolution. So the way we look at this, we had 6 on the intention resolution tonight that we're going for the emergency connection SAD. Realistically, most of those were done last year. We weren't able to get the SAD completed in time. On average, since 2016, or even before then, we're averaging 2 to 3 every 6 months if we're lucky. We're really underutilizing this fund, and what we'd like to do is eliminate some of these hurdles. When these folks want to participate in this fund, they already have to come to us with proof that their field has failed. These folks are in a dire need at this point in time. In addition, there are requirements that the lien can't be, a certain percentage of the value of their house or higher. We feel like they already have some skin in the game, there's, on average, these connections cost, for pressurized connections, they cost around over $20,000 per household. Those include a lien that our agreement spells out is placed on the property. So they have a lot of skin in the game. They can't sell their house until these liens are paid off. So we would like to, I felt like I wanted to put a question mark on this because I don't know, since it wasn't in the resolution, if that was an administrative decision that created those ineligible costs, or if that was a discussion that I didn't find in my discovery. But what I'm looking to ask the board to do is authorize us to reduce those costs down to just the design fee up front, if it's a pressurized sewer, and then folks can have that design done. Then they decide if they want to move forward once they get their itemized cost estimate. For the gravity side, there is no design fee. They would get their 3 bids, come in and, sign the documents, and then they'd be on their way. We'd like to take those ineligible costs on the gravity side down to 0.
I think that's a good idea, Aaron.
We're really trying to increase the use of this fund. We've got about, as of my last water report from the treasurer's office, we had approximately $360,000 in the PA 188 savings, and I think $60,000 in the PA 188 checking. So I feel like we can fund a lot more of these than the 6 that we are funding, this year, and, get some of these folks to come forward, stop hiding these field failures because of these onerous, out-of-pocket upfront costs, and help these people get connected.
And we do have, and part of this is just that, this is an emergency fund. And not everybody is going to have that additional $1,200 laying on a shelf that they might have to come up with for abandonment and some of the other things. And the $650, there's certain design elements that's a cost the township bears from the engineering of that. So that is a modest fee. And I think this remediates the problem, which again helps our groundwater protection. So,
Can I?
Yes, and Counselor has something.
Aaron, the resolution itself did not dictate what the ineligible costs were, but the resolution itself attached the agreement that the township board approved to be utilized, which did separate the ineligible costs. Why the $650 well abandonment ineligible cost was identified, I can't tell you. I can tell you that I do recall it being Terry Lilly who was a proponent of adding that as an ineligible cost, but I don't recall the rationale behind that.
Yeah.
And that's all you're asking this board to do, though, is to convert the 600 and just not make the ineligible cost $650 for the well abandonment. They're still going to pay that $650. It's just going to be rolled into the cost of the entire project and in the agreement that they're going to have to sign and agree to pay for in the future.
Yeah, and let me.
So you're asking the board to amend the standard agreement to remove that ineligible item.
Yes, and that was in my
Otherwise, we'll
motion
have to,
tonight.
yeah, okay.
Yep. But let's, I want to just be clear, there were 3 ineligible costs that we've been using. $650 was the design fee for our engineer to go and create it's actually $550 for the design fee and $100 for the easement drawing. And then there was a $750 septic tank abandonment. And then there was the $330 inspection fee for resident inspection on the project, which is full-time inspection on the project, because the township assumes maintenance responsibility of these grinder stations through our agreements with Oakland County. So we do want to have inspection on the project. Those seemed very arbitrary to me. And it may make sense at the time, but like I said, we do have a lien on the property for the entire cost of the project. So anything that the board is interested in rolling back into the cost of the project and allowing to be eligible under the agreement would be appreciated by DPS. And actually, even the $650 on the engineering, if they pay that up front and then they decide to go ahead and sign the agreement, which I am going to ask the board to authorize Lisa to amend. Maybe that's even arbitrary. I don't really see the need for a lot of huge out-of-pocket costs for these customers that are going to have this massive lien on the property anyway.
Mr. Powell.
Mr. Supervisor, I, like Aaron, deal with this daily. And typically, when people need to connect in, it is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with, and most of the time, they just don't have that kind of money sitting around. In Aaron and my discussion on this today, I find absolutely no logical reason for any of these fees to be eliminated from eligibility in the SAD. There's just no logic in it whatsoever. Sometimes, and I can get into it in our sanitary sewer discussions, some other issues, but none of these have ever been brought up by any attorney or any SAD that I've ever been involved with. And I would be in major favor of eliminating all of these ineligible fees. And let's give the people a break, because they really need a break.
Roll it into the SAD.
Roll it into the SAD.
If it
Correct.
qualifies.
If it qualifies,
For
and
SAD
I'm guaranteeing you it is, there are some issues that I will bring up in our meeting, but these absolutely qualify.
Yeah, I see no reason why we won't do that. We're trying to promote this. And again,
Absolutely.
what concerns me the most is that someone, because they may not have that extra money laying around, is kind of looking at that squish in their yard and just trying to ignore it. And let's pile the leaves over it, and hope it goes away.
And usually, guys, it is a time when there might be an environmental emergency as well.
Correct.
You have, typically, these are around lakes, and you have sanitary sewage flowing down into the lake that has to be dealt with. And this is really critical stuff.
This really only applies to our residential.
Right.
Only, just to clarify that to our residents out there, this is strictly residential. That we do this for our community so that we can try to alleviate these problems. So,
What we see a
Mr.
lot
Roman.
of are folks hiding these failures
Yeah.
because they don't have a couple $1,000s in the bank, or maybe they don't have that cash liquidity at the time, and then they'll hide these failures until the thing is completely non-functional, or worse, their neighbors turn them into the county. And then they're forced to pump and haul, which is even more expensive. And on top of the pump and hauling expense, now we're hitting them with this ineligible cost.
yeah. No, I think it's a good move. A little story, I recall one here a few years ago that was disguised with an overturned rowboat.
Yeah. Well,
Mr. Roman. Mr. Roman.
Well, I was instrumental in bringing this program in here. We actually, didn't we copycat off Commerce?
You did, yeah, you
Commerce.
and I looked at that.
So I don't remember all the whys, but I thought there was a reason that these costs were ineligible. And maybe, Lisa, you can look into it. I don't remember why.
I don't
but-
remember either, but I know there was discussion about it.
Yeah, buy-in was an issue. We wanted the homeowner to have some buy-in. And then I thought Janine and Terry were involved in SAD eligible and ineligible, and I thought that was why some of these things were included as ineligible.
I did discuss this with Janine.
Oh, how did that go?
And Janine didn't think that any of these would be ineligible under the law.
Okay.
She didn't remember why they were decided.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, I mean, you said your average grinder station install is probably a good $20,000. And
Close to
And I think
$21,000.
these SADs run 10 years, right?
Yes.
Man, if they can't afford these upfront costs, I don't know how they're going to afford their tax bill every year, because their payment on these sewer costs
But this
going to be in excess of $2,000
This
a
comes
year.
as a surprise, though, and they can't plan for it, whereas when they sign it, then they have to plan
Yeah.
for it.
And it becomes part of their mortgage
That's a good
generally.
point. It's a good point, yeah, then their mortgage payment goes up.
That's true, but that's something they can budget for.
But yeah, as long as our attorney is good with it, I don't have a problem with it.
And I would have no issue if the board, I guess the last statement in my memo to you tonight, was to authorize the township attorney to modify the standard agreements, which would be part of this anyway. You know, if you wanted to authorize the township attorney to modify the agreements towards what we're trying to do or what we would like to do, or at least, you know, take a look at it and report
would-
back to the board.
You're just looking to modify the ineligible costs as much as possible?
Yep.
So that's the authority, that's the only authority you're looking for? I have no problem with that, working with the township supervisor.
Design-wise, I just don't want the township to lose money either. So timing-wise, when do they sign the agreement? Is that before any design is even started?
No, typically they would come in and pay their $650. We would get the design done, which usually takes a week or so.
So that's how you
And
can
then,
determine
once we
cost.
get the itemized cost estimate, at that point, the customer would decide if they wanted to finance that themselves, or if they, you know, if they are eligible and they do have documentation of a failure, then they could participate in that. And at that point, it's really a check from them for the ineligible costs and a couple of signatures on the agreement.
So they paid the design up front.
Yep.
And then what was the other? Was it 50 or 100?
It was $650 design fee included the $100 easement, which becomes the exhibit to the
I thought there
agreement.
was the 100 a permit fee maybe?
Easement.
I'm thinking. No,
Easement.
there was a
It was,
permit fee in there for something.
Those are already
$330
included.
for inspection, and then there was a $750 for the tank abandonment. Now, the tank abandonment actually is another issue, especially on the gravity connections, where we've had several customers in the past say, well, they didn't want to pay the ineligible tank abandonment, they would abandon it themselves. And then, unfortunately for me, then I have to have sometimes several more inspections out to the property to make sure that they've actually done that. So we would like all of that to be included in their cost estimate, and
That takes that responsibility as part of the
included in
process.
you know, what they can be eligible to assess, I guess.
Keep in mind that because the township cannot go on private property, all of this is subject to, before anything can be installed, the homeowner has to have the control box energized from their house. And that is a separate contract with their electrician before the township can even start any process. So they've got $450 to $1,000 to get the electrical to the box before any work can be done by the township.
Right.
So.
So, Mr. Ruggles?
Looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a motion.
So, before I make the motion, did we agree that we want to have zero ineligible costs? Is that what we're talking about?
As small as possible.
Well, we want to leave
Authorize,
the design fee.
you're gonna authorize the township attorney to revise the agreement
You have to, that's got to be paid up
To,
front. $650.
to require the least amount of ineligible costs possible while working with the township supervisor.
Okay.
Least amount of ineligible costs as possible. Just for discussion purposes, if I may, I do recall that the design fee was a requirement because we didn't want to have to pay out of pocket to get something that might not go anywhere.
Correctly.
So I have a solution to that, if I might. So when a customer pays the design fee to us, that actually creates a trust and agency escrow that the accounting branch creates for us, that we use to pay invoices for their project. At the end of the project, it all has to balance. The cost estimate includes typically a contingency. Then, once all the invoices for the total project have been paid, we review that with the accounting office and authorize the remaining funds from the contingency usually to be refunded to them. Now, if somebody were to come in and pay their design fee, then decide that they wanted to participate in the SAD, once they sign their agreement, we could, if we wanted to as a township, refund their $650 out of their trust and agency escrow and roll that cost into the tax assessment.
That's exactly what we do.
I think it's an
Absolutely
accounting,
correct.
you're just creating an accounting headache.
No, because there's a refund anyway.
It
Every
happens
project has a
There is no-
refund anyway.
There is no refund.
Oh, yes, there is.
Oh, at the end of the process.
At the end of the
there is.
process. Right.
Well, I'll respectfully disagree with you because I want some buy-in, and I think 650 is really reasonable.
Okay.
But
And that's only for gravity. I'm sorry, for
No, for
grinder.
any.
For grinder, yeah.
Gravity doesn't have that.
Correct.
All right, well, typically with gravity, the taps are already there. The taps go in with the main, and then we get a lead report from the engineer that was the inspector on the job. So when the customer comes in, they pay their permit to us. We authorize their licensed and bonded plumber to go out there and make the tap. Oakland County inspects the tap. We're out of there.
All right, I want to move along on this. So I'd like to make that motion and just, if you can compile that with council's direction, and that will allow the supervisor and council to work out the administrative.
Well, I think I'm going to make a motion to have them pay the $650 design fee, and we can vote on that, but I'm going to go with Mike on this one.
Yeah, I got to kind of lean with Mike on this one myself. That's the absolute minimum amount of skin in the game that they're going to have on this thing, so we don't have everything else we can kind of try to roll into it. That's just my feeling on it.
Let's do that, and I'm okay until we have our sanitary sewer committee meeting, because I think I will be informing you that there might need to be a change.
Okay, well, but let's go this far, and then we can always review it again. I'm
good with
totally
that.
open to it. I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
All right, Lisa, what was your,
Authorize the township supervisor and the township attorney to revise the agreement in accordance with the township board's direction today.
exactly that. I'll make that into a motion to amend the emergency sewer connection SAD, just as Lisa spoke to, and have the design fee of $650
Remain as an ineligible cost item.
remain as an ineligible cost item.
Got it?
Got it.
Fair enough.
That's a motion.
Support.
I have motion, I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it. We're moving in the right direction.
That took way longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, I know.
Like I said, I needed question marks on the end because I didn't even know what the right procedure was. so
Okay,
I just
T,
figured,
a
bring it in
request
here
to
and figure
approve
it out.
agreement.
Wait, wait,
What?
who supported Scott's motion?
Anthony?
I did.
Anthony.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Request to approve agreement for USIC locating services, more commonly known more or less as missed dig type services. We do this annually. This is kind of a boilerplate agreement. You're shaking your head no. I've seen this
It's
thing
actually not.
come through here a couple of times.
I haven't seen it since 2016.
Has it been that long?
And the contract was
In the contract world, I remember seeing it. So at least I can remember back to 2016. Okay. So, but we're going to bring it in, a little housekeeping, clean it up.
Yep, so exactly that. URG has been bought by U.S. Infrastructure Company, as well as a bunch of other companies that they own that do underground locating. We thought we had a contract with URG. Apparently, that never quite got all the way to where we liked it. However, we've been operating on this contract, and we've been getting great pricing from URG for over 5 years. We haven't had a single utility strike for anything that they locate for me in that 5 years. So I'm requesting the township board to authorize township supervisor to sign the independent contractor agreement for missed dig marking services for the water system with USIC.
Once the blanks are filled in.
Yeah, once we, finalize the last details. They have extended the same pricing. The pricing hasn't gone up. So we liked it then. I like it even more now. And it's just a huge benefit to the township.
Mr. Noble, you want to make a motion? Go ahead. You want to make a motion on that?
Yes, I'll make the motion. I'd like to make a motion request to approve the agreement for USIC Locating Service LLC.
I have a motion, looking for support.
And have the township supervisor
And
sign the
have the
agreement.
The
township.
blanks are filled in.
Yes.
Support.
That'll work. Okay. All right. And supported by,
Support.
Supported by Trustee Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, okay. Resolution 22004, Brenda Lake, Mute Swan, and Goose Nesting Destruction and Roundup. Well, that time of year again. This is a 22 to 26 permit. It's kind of self-explanatory, folks. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a, Supervisor Coe, I'll make a motion for Resolution 22-004, Brenda Lake, Swan and Goose Nest Egg Destruction and Roundup,
2022
22 and 2026.
through 2026. I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Resolution 22005, Sugden Lake Goose Nest Roundup Egg Destruction and Hold. That's different, the hold. Okay. Looking for a motion.
Supervisor Coe, I'd like to make a motion on Resolution 22-005, Sugden Lake Goose Nest Roundup Eggs Destruction and Hold through 2022 through 2026.
I have motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mr. Ruggles. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Limited tax general obligation bonds. We've had discussion in-house on this and we wanted to bring it forth to the board. We have an opportunity to sell up to $29 million worth of bonds, and there's been a lot of back and forth on this, and I'm going to be very interested in hearing everyone's opinion on this. So I'm going to start with Mr. Ruggles.
Rick, I'm gonna jump up there if I may.
You may, if you like. You just want to move around.
Well, with the old boardroom, you could kind of see everyone.
Yeah.
But I really want to make sure I understand everyone's take on that.
Okay, Mr. Ruggles?
You guys all have this 9S, Rick?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Do you want to start, Rick, or do you want me to kind of go over this?
I just kind of thought that
Your call.
Scott could, if you want to make
No, go ahead.
please,
Go ahead, Mike.
by all
And
means.
I think if you guys can kind of get a grasp for what I've done here, the top section is kind of what we're looking at as cost for, just for the two buildings, public safety, Township Hall, as well as infrastructure for it. And if you look at the top section, right now we're looking at roughly $37 million. That's at $500 a square foot. Legal binding miscellaneous, I've got $500,000 in. And then infrastructure, I used $1.5 million. I think last time I talked to Mike Powell, I think he said it might be a little less, but I went conservative. So basically, we need to come up with $37 million. The next section is really available funds. And assuming we use all of the funds that I've listed as the $15,130,000, the minimum amount of the bond would need to be almost $22 million, okay? But that assumes we use all of the available funds that I've listed, okay? And I'm going to go through them. We've got $7.8 million sitting in improvement revolving. We're going to ask the building fund for about $1.149 million, police and fire for $2 million, water sewer for about $900,000, and then we've got American Rescue Plan Act money. We've got half of it now. We're still waiting on the other half. That'll total $3.28 million. So if we used all of that money up, we need to bind out for $21.8 million.
Roughly 22 million.
Yeah, roughly 22 million. Jump to the bottom for a sec, because the township does have other money, okay? And if you look at the fund balances as of December 31st of 2021, general fund's got 6.478 million, fire has 7 million, police has 5.1 million, building has 2.1 million. The big question is do you guys want to use up all the money that I show in available funds? It wouldn't be prudent to use it all, I don't think. I think you want to keep some in savings, and that's the big question. How much do you want to keep in savings? Keep in mind, I'm only showing infrastructure for the 5 acres, okay? We've got another, how many acres, Rick?
About 6, 7 acres.
6, so there is the north end.
Town center.
The town center where we want to develop along with River Caddis. We will need some money for some of that infrastructure. We don't know how much yet. The TIF, Corridor Improvement Authority, will hopefully pay us back for all infrastructure for both the 5 acres as well as the north 6 acres. But we may need some money to put up front. We don't know how much that's going to be yet. So, scenario 1, we only save we keep in improvement revolving 3.1 million, which means we bond out for 25 million. Scenario 2, we keep 7.1 million in savings and improvement revolving and bond out for the whole 29. So I just showed you guys 2 scenarios. Just to give you an idea what the bond payments would be like if you flipped to page 2. Bobby Benzinski put this together. It's an amort schedule for a 30-year bond for 25 million. The interest rate is 2.5%. I don't think we're going to get that good, not what the market's doing now. But if we did get that deal, 30 years at 2.5% for 25 million, if you go to the far right column, you can see your payment every year is about 1.18 million. Now, if you change this to 29 million from 25 million, you're going to have an additional $190,000 a year. That said, questions, concerns, thoughts?
Mike, I've got a question. I just want to pick into your brain a little bit. How did you come up and why did you come up with the shared available funds from the different departments?
Great question.
You've got a much higher percentage into the building department than you do under police and fire.
Yeah, so great question, Mike. So Plant Moran told us we cannot just randomly select those numbers, okay? So for the Township Hall building, we looked at the square footage that the building department would be using, as well as water and sewer. That's how we came up with those numbers, okay? We charged them both for their own space as well as a percentage of shared space. As far as police and fire, as far as square footage goes there, it's looking like it's going to be 60-40 police versus fire. And to be honest with you, that's all they can afford right now. So kind of a little different scenario for public safety. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yes, because they've got 12 million sitting there, and you've only attributed 2,000 between the two of them. 2 million, I'm sorry.
Yeah, very different spending requirements for them. A lot of that is at 04 millage too, which I don't think we can touch anyway.
There's 3 million into that.
Okay.
And you can't touch it, you can only use it, and it's depleting as the years go on. Every time that they purchase a fire truck, that money dwindles down.
Yeah, I mean, we can always tweak these too, you guys. These are nothing is set in stone. 2 schools of thought. Howard Cohn, his attitude is borrow the whole thing. You just don't know how much you'll need. Okay, from a conservative point of view, it's always good to have extra savings. Okay? I believe the bonds, once we sell these, I believe after 10 years, we'll probably be able to prepay extra principal if we want, but not until the 10 years is up.
That was going to be my next question.
Mike, is this 500 square foot, is that for sure yet, or you're just?
Nope, it's not for sure, but I will tell you that River Caddis had verbally represented to us that they can do it for 500 a foot. That doesn't include infrastructure or furniture now. So I'm hoping River Caddis comes through because that was a promise that they made to us, and they need to come through soon with the GMP, Guaranteed Maximum Price Contract of $500 a foot.
And I like the way you presented that, the guaranteed maximum, that doesn't mean that it couldn't go down if.
Well, there's
That's correct, Mike.
some mechanisms in place to motivate them to make it go down.
Correct.
And, which we haven't got all ironed out yet, and I don't want to speculate, but there are mechanisms in place, so we're waiting for them to kind of come back to us, and then we can sit down and talk about it, and we go further.
And that being said, do you have plans to sit down with this board and go over the square footages, the use, the fixtures, the finishes of each of the buildings?
When it comes to that time, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely, absolutely. There'll be a charrette,
Good.
on that type of
Thank you.
that process. I will go to Mr. Scott, as I started with, and I'm going to let him start his comment. If you're good, Mike, are you good, Mike?
Do you guys want me to head back? Do you want me to stay up here? It doesn't matter.
This will stay there. You're the presenter.
I'll stay here.
Yeah,
Doing
no,
just fine.
Thanks for
I do
this.
better with a pen in my hand.
Not getting mine.
Not mine either. Take your own pen.
Remember Tom Cruise uses the baseball bat?
Yeah,
Good men.
I talked to Mike a day or two ago, and some of the questions I had was, what's the infrastructure going to cost? What's the, what is it, FF&E, right? Fixtures.
Fixture.
Oh, yeah.
Right. What's that going to total for us? What is the real end total, is the best that we can come up with so that, we have real numbers to look at. So this is the most realistic thing I've seen so far.
Yeah, and I would say this, John McGraw, when he gave us the number of 500 a foot, he also said he thinks, and he's confident that he can bring it in for less. So if we use 500 a foot, I think we're good.
The counterproductive thing to that is he gets a percentage of the total. So there's that aspect of it, right?
Yes.
No. But-
Yes, there
so
would
that's
be a
kinda
fee payable to River Caddis.
Counterproductive for him to lower the amount.
No, it's
Right.
not, because there's a factor in there of which is common in the industry. It's a economic incentive that they get a certain percentage for every dollar they save us.
A percentage of everything underneath 500.
Correct.
Yeah, at the back end of the deal.
It really is actually a motivator for a contractor, simply because you get a base fee, which is a certain number, and the recovery number is generally significantly higher than the base fee. So there's a motivation on your part as a contractor to make sure that you get everything, the best actual possible price that you can on the base. It actually works quite well.
That's good to know. The only other thing I would say about this is the most important number that I see on here is this interest rate, and it's gonna be
Going up.
terrible for us if it ticks up. I mean, that's very important.
So that thought process is the same as mine. I know Rick feels the same way and Anthony feels the same way. Let's get this money in-house as soon as we can.
Yeah.
The timeline presented by Bobby Benzinski would allow us to sell these bonds in early April. But right now, in order to do that, River Caddis and the township need to sign an agreement with the guaranteed maximum price of $500 a foot. We need that ASAP.
We gave direction last week to do that, so,
Well, they're still working out some details.
right.
So,
But I
and-
mean, we did move forward and give direction.
But right now, the reason that this came to us this evening is that this resolution that we're going to pass tonight is a requirement of the bond sales. So that's why we need to pass this now, to have it on deck and just be in line for part of that process. This is the ending of the 45-day period of referendum, so this is now the next step. So we're just following it in sequence.
I will tell you guys that the bonds we want to sell are going to be tax-free to whoever buys them. And because of that, there are some rules that we're going to have to follow. Within 6 months of bond issuance, we have to contractually obligate ourselves to at least 5% of the bond proceeds. No problem. And then hopefully we'll spend all of this money within 3 years. And even if we don't, I don't think, I still think we're in good shape. There are arbitrage rules that limit the amount of interest income you can make on your money if you don't spend it all within 3 years, but I don't see that as being an issue.
We should write our check right now if we want to invest.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. I have a question for you, Mike. When we go to refinance our house, various houses, there's a decision that we need to make. Do we borrow in order to increase our savings in our account? And that's a balance between can we afford the payments over the life of the bond or the mortgage versus what we're going to do with the savings, because the bond costs are going to, our borrowing is going to cost a lot more than what we can typically invest it at.
Mike, can you say that again? Because you just hit the nail on the head. That's the $1 million question. Which way do you go? And I just want to make sure everyone understand, that's the issue.
Yes.
I just think, oh, go ahead.
You've usually done a very good job, but lately the investment opportunities are typically less than what this 2.5% is. And so the question is, I would feel better to borrow more, but then you threw a little caveat in there that says we can't pay it off. We can't pay on principal, overpay on principal for 10 years.
Correct.
So that's a key statement that you made.
I think my thought, and we've been throwing this around the last few days, talking back and forth, bouncing ideas, but when you do construction with the way the market is up and down, I would rather have that cushion and borrow that money at 2.5, because as Scott said earlier, it's going to go up. So it only makes sense to me to take that, because I would rather have that than run lean on the project. You get in, as you know, the infrastructure and that kind of cost. Well, there's going to be hidden variables in there.
So let me ask you an overwhelming question of our illustrious treasurer. With the way I perceive the government going, I see bond rates going up, I see interest rates skyrocketing. I have a mental image of Jimmy Carter living through that era. Do you foresee, if that does come about, do you foresee a much better opportunity to invest higher than the bond rate that we're going to be borrowing in the future if what we see happening continues?
I see interest rates going up as you do. I don't think they're going to skyrocket. I think they'll creep up. I think the bigger issue is, if you borrow more and you have that money, are you disciplined enough not to use it on other things?
I have faith in my treasurer.
Really, you have to have that discipline.
Borrow it, they're going to take it all.
No.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know, Liz, thoughts?
I am just taking it all in at the moment. I suppose that I initially would have been more conservative and just borrowed what we needed, but after hearing my colleagues' thoughts, I mean, kind of makes sense to have the cushion.
If we can lock in at this 2.5%, which is going to be on a timeline like Treasurer Roman said, which is very, very crucial, with the 500 GMP, which we're hoping that this comes together. We're optimistic. Again, I think we're never going to see money this cheap.
That I totally agree.
Yeah.
We need to move now. We need to move yesterday. That
Okay.
I completely
So
agree.
you're on board?
Yeah.
You're kind of thinking, borrow the extra money? It's cheap today?
I don't think it's going to be extra.
Scott, you kind of in the middle, or you're?
Well, when we talked before, I was more comfortable at the 25.
Okay, I am too. I'm more comfortable at 25, but I'm flexible.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
understand
stuck on
both schools of thought.
I'm not stuck on it, but I'd hate to do like other communities and get it built and then fall short. And then
Yeah.
we can't afford the chairs or whatever, so.
That's what I felt at first, is
And that's happened on projects.
initially scenario one, because, more conservative, I'm just comfortable with that, but
You'd hate to not have that overhang on the front.
Right.
Yeah,
I just think it leaves us out there in the
I've
wind.
seen that
Well, it is
happen
cheap
before.
money. It is cheap
Supervisor
money.
may actually have to take a pay cut if we need more.
Yeah. I keep going down.
So Mike Powell, you're kind of thinking borrow it all?
Yeah, I think so.
Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, generally on the cheap side too, but after this conversation, borrow it all.
That's what I needed to hear.
What do you want to do?
I'm stuck on the 25. I don't like the higher payment and.
Of course you don't.
And and to me, it's more money you can spend on things you don't need, so.
Well, and that's a, that's the flip side of it. If they know we have more, is everything else then going to become a little more because we
Well,
have
I
it,
think
Well, everything's gonna go to bid. It's gonna go
Yeah,
out
it's
to
gonna go
bid.
to bid, and I think-
That shouldn't happen.
Hopefully not.
Let me ask a question of everyone. Besides the buildings, and we aren't going to gold plate things, and hopefully we're not going to build costs into it. How would we feel about utilizing some used equipment? Some communities, and I think Orion did, they said, we're in a new building, let's buy everything all brand new. And then what do we do?
I
Then we
think-
have all this other stuff.
I think if you buy used equipment, you get used problems.
I'm not talking about buying, no.
Oh, like-
utilizing our existing stuff. Instead of going out and buying all.
What we can salvage, I agree with.
Yeah.
I agree with you,
Yeah, I
Mike,
agree
what we
with you
can
there.
salvage,
Yeah.
but for,
Everything that we can, that's good.
yeah, but for example, if you tried to do an office cubicle layout, say in the DPS department or in the planning department, you're gonna have a quilt of desks because none of them match, none of the systems are the same, and you can't get, you just get parts. Aaron and I have been on the hunt to try to get parts to try to have some consistency, and we have a quilt of different types of desk systems and stuff like that. Not that that's the worst thing in the world, but it just doesn't function very well. And when things break, you can't get parts to replace them. So that is just a consideration. I'm not saying necessarily that we have to go out and get for the entire building all new stuff. And there may be some things, I mean, obviously file, there's a lot of things that we're not going to have to, there's nothing wrong with them, okay? And we'll be able to repurpose them in the new building.
And so let me interrupt just briefly, because we have to be really careful, as you said, be diligent enough not to overspend, because we could spend, and you know as well as I do, you could spend $80,000 on a desk, a raised platform desk for us to sit at in a township hall. We could easily do that, but why?
We wouldn't do that.
I understand, but we could. I've been before boards that you feel like they're God up there, and.
Yeah, but
with
we
that same-
are never, ever going to be able to put the rein on future boards. We can't, because we don't know who those people are or what they're going to do. But we have historically had a foundation here of very conservative operation. And that history, I believe, will continue to work itself, because as you enter into these positions and you function here, you understand why we do what we do and what makes it tick, and why we are in the position that we are in. We are in a we have very solid footing. But here's why I would say borrow the 29 million. Number one, we're not going to get the money any cheaper, even if it creeps up a little bit more. Number two, we have other infrastructure and other things to the tune of about $5 million that are going to need to be looked at in the town center area. We're going to have road, parking lot, and other utilities to create the basic framework and/or outline of that particular area to create what I'll call pad sites, prospective pad sites. If we do not have this money, okay, and I'm estimating it about almost 5 million, okay, because that also includes building a farmer's market, because that is going to be an anchor, okay? And if we have this and we go forth, irregardless of whatever happens with any outside influence, River Cadis, Man on the Moon, doesn't matter, okay? We need to have the ability to do that and move forward, because those things are going to be the catalyst for the rest of it to move forward. You know and I know, if it's an empty field, everybody goes, well, one day. All of a sudden, if there's roads, there's fire hydrants, there's utilities in there, all of a sudden, now you have a deliverable site of which now a plan can be brought in and moved forth. I think we will be selling ourselves terribly short, if we do not at least venture into this project to that level. And that is why I believe we need that extra funding, because I would rather have the money behind us to move forward and make this a viable project and plan it that way. And I believe the true factor, if you build it, they will come, okay? And we will get people that will show up there, because all of a sudden, we will now have created a sense of place in conjunction with the library, in conjunction with Stanley Park. Something's going on, something's happening. There's a farmer's market here now. Be a part of it, come in and be part of what we're going to do. And that's why I highly recommend we go with the $29 million.
So I agree with you that it needs to be seen and visual, and, you know, the community needs to know it's happening for sure. But to play devil's advocate just a little bit, we have it either way. Either way, you know, whichever figure we borrow, if we go with the 25, we still have it in our funds. So it's not like we don't have it available to us if we need it.
I guess what I'm looking for is a little cushion for all the reasons that Mr. Powell stated, every one of them. Because you do not and cannot forecast. I would much rather the township be in a position that it can hold its own for a period of time if need be, okay, than be in a position of, okay, now what do we do, okay? And I think that it's prudent, and at the end of 10 years, if we have our capture zone, and with monies that we have, if we want to take and do a major principal down pay on the payment on the bond, I think that would be something that we would definitely take a look at and do. And I think that's just, to be in that position, to be able to do it is far better than speculating whether or not we're going to be able to do it.
All right, well.
What was the number that you threw out for the difference between the 29 million?
Go to 1.3.
About at this rate, it's about another $190,000 a year.
Okay.
1.4.
What's that?
It'll be 1.4.
Yeah,
Roughly 1.4.
Yeah.
Rough 1.4.
So that ends up
1.2
being
and 1.4.
$16,000 more a month.
Say that again?
$16,000 more a month is $198,000 by the year. And so if all this happens, you know, we're going to have all those new apartments and all of that's going to increase our taxable authority here in the
I
township
think we'll
as
catch
well.
it in the back end.
We'll catch it in the back end. So I'm very confident that we will be able to make this work. And I don't want to see us to get in a position where we don't have the ability to do certain things that may be beyond the scope of work or what we're looking at now, okay? And, you know, I firmly believe this board is disciplined enough and will be the ones that will set the course for this particular area. And we will make sure that, you know, it's set up. And I don't know if by resolution we can reserve funds or at least set it up so that a board would have to get together and untie a knot, so to speak. I'm just throwing that out there. Some way, shape, or form that, you know, this is the war chest for this, and this is what it's for, and, you know, if we need to tap into it, it's going to take a resolution for us to tap into that money. I mean, there's got to be a way to at least heighten the awareness of the fiscal responsibility of this board to future boards. And I believe that we, you know, can come up with a mechanism, and I would just like to see us not to have a shortcoming either on the front end or on things that we want to do and we want to put out there for the public.
Well, it sounds like the consensus here is to borrow the whole thing. And I think we should, just put it right in the resolution.
Okay.
Someone make a motion and vote on it.
It is in the resolution,
Isn't
Isn't it?
Rick?
I'm pretty sure the resolution already has
I think
29.
there's a
Oh, yeah,
line
it does.
in here that says how much you're going to borrow.
Yeah, right here. To be not less than 29 million.
That's up
Yeah.
to, that's up to.
Up
on
to
the front
29.
page.
Oh, not less than, oh, it says not less than 29.
Less than
No,
29.
that's,
That's what mine says.
that's the cost of the project.
But then it says authorize the selling of bonds not to exceed 29 million.
Okay, let's go to
I've got a question.
page,
Isn't there some information that we got to
page
have from River Caddis before we can even
No,
entertain
no, this is part of the process. You can do this
okay,
now.
page 8 is where we need to put the amount in.
Yes, Scott. Scott. They won't sell the bond until, offer the bonds to sale until we have that information.
Oh, I see,
But this is
yeah.
just one of the dominoes that you have to do. If we waited till then, we'd have to do this.
and then extend it out?
Yeah, the interest rate keeps
This is
going.
just one of the dominoes. It doesn't mean they're going to go to sale, it's just our resolution moves it forward.
Several blanks in that section.
Yeah.
So in theory, if they came in on the end,
we
at the
approve
end of
the
the month and they
resolution
have
as
a
it is, I
contract,
think
I
it's
call a
okay,
special board
but-
meeting. We sign it, we're done,
I would
we're
because
off to the races.
we want this turned in by March 1st.
Yeah.
So someone should make a motion to approve this. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 22-007 with a bonding amount of $29 million.
I'll support that.
call.
Roll call vote.
Supervisor Kowal,
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes. Treasurer Roman,
Yes.
Trustee Ruggles,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Trustee Powell,
Yes.
Trustee Voorhees.
Yes.
Outstanding. Great.
Thanks for the discussion, you guys.
And great job, Mike. And we have been painstakingly pounding our heads on the wall and the desk and everywhere else trying to pull all this stuff together. It's, wow, you know, we're getting there. So this is the closest this township's ever been to moving in this direction, and I'd like to thank everyone for their cooperation.
We did not have to include in that bond resolution to increase the millage rate or the taxes to the
No
residents.
millage, yeah, and that was the objective, our objective all along. So I know it was mine.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us on to trustee comments. Mr. Powell?
Mr. Supervisor, I want to thank you for operating and running an extremely good meeting, and I want to thank the public because I believe the public provides us with great information. Thank you, Brian, for being here. You're a glutton for punishment to stick this out this long. I do want to thank you, I want to thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for a warm building. I have frozen my tush off in this building in the past, and I appreciate you
Well,
making that happen.
there was some technical issues we had, and we got through them, and we had to put a new furnace in here, too.
Well, thank you
That's the way
for
it
that.
goes. So,
And that's it. Thank you.
okay. Mr. Roman?
I just want to thank my staff for another awesome tax season. If you haven't paid your winter taxes yet, or your summer for that matter, you can still pay them at the township through the end of February. But come March, you have to pay at Oakland County. So thanks to my staff for all your hard work. You guys are great. I love you all.
Cool. Mr. Noble?
I'd just like to thank Brian for being here tonight, inviting us out on the walk with your neighbors and keeping everybody informed. And as a board, as you know, we're trying to do our best by the people, not coming back with a millage. And we're trying to think outside the box, and I believe this board's doing so. If I could, I mean, we've had, thanks to Sean and his staff, we've had numerous, I feel like I'm sleeping this, waking up at night, and we appreciate all your input.
Andrea?
Thank you. 1997 was a monumental year in White Lake Township. Because that was 97, because that was your Parks and Recreation was started. This year, we celebrate our 25th year of a group of volunteers that include Rich Sola, Gene Shiloff, Karen Robinson, Kim Talley, Bill Sweeney, Shirley Kowalski, Deb Darren, CJ Brada, Murray Carlock, Rhonda Grob, Deb DeHart, Kathy Esseltine, and myself. In those 25 years that we've been around, like I said, we're all a volunteer group. We've started with Bloomer Park, We've done Hidden Pines, and we're now working on Stanley Park. So for 25, I mean, when we were at our last Parks and Rec meeting, when that came out, I'm like, that's absolutely something I need to talk about, because like I keep saying the word volunteer, but we're a volunteer group that meet religiously. We've done a lot. And also I've asked Liz to join me in wearing red tonight. This is Wear Red for Women Month. 1 in 3 women will die from heart disease and stroke, making it more deadly than all cancers combined. I know that's my family disease, so thank you, Liz, for joining me. Lisa, I'll look at you next year, so I apologize.
I didn't
Thank
get the
you.
reminder.
Yes, you will
Get
get
the
one.
memo. Trustee Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll be fairly quick. Library is back and up and running as usual. Everything is, all services are available like normal. I want to thank Brian. We've all thanked you. You've hung in there all night for us, so we appreciate it. My colleagues and I that joined you and Joe on the walk, we really did enjoy it. And I appreciated your comments because you took the time to get to know us and really ask questions, and your comments were very kind, and that you recognize that we do really care and we are really taking this very seriously. So thank you for being an ambassador to Brendel Heights and sharing that information back to your neighbors that after our meeting. We really do appreciate that. I just want to take a second procedurally because I anticipate that a lot of your neighbors will be starting to join us at these meetings and planning commission meetings. We are not allowed to comment back during public comment. So it is just that public comment, 3 minutes, and we're here to listen. So sometimes residents are passionate and they yell things from us from the crowd, or why aren't you answering? We're not being rude or funny. We're just not supposed to have a dialogue during public comment. So I just want to mention that for the future. We are so happy to listen to you. That's what we're here for. We want to hear from residents. So please do come and share your ideas and passion and concerns. It really does help us and we find value in it. But just know we're not being rude in any way by not having a dialogue. That's just our procedure. We are saying we don't know because we genuinely don't know. This is the process to zone first, rezone first, and then go through the planning procedure. So again, I just wanted to share with our residents and public that we're not trying to be flippant and saying we don't know. We just have to wait for those plans to come to fruition before we can move forward in the process, and that's normal procedure. So I just wanted to share that with the residents that are going to join us on this journey to develop this area. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, thanks. The Planning Commission's next meeting on the 17th has been canceled, and our next meeting will be on March 3rd. As far as the discussion we had about the signs, I'd love the opportunity to discuss the ordinance with Mr. O'Neill.
I bet you
Planning
would.
Commission. Not, just maybe it needs a refresher, You see things when you drive around, like on Milford Road in Highland. There's an old rickety sign, it's metal, and you probably go by it all the time, and it leans like this. And so he redid the inside to be straight, right? Because he can't redo a sign, because if he takes it away, then it's got to be this tall and that wide. So he likes his big, tall sign. So stuff like that would be worthwhile for discussion, but not that there's anything wrong, but a little discussion never hurt, so thank you.
No, it's, again, from time to time, we need to look at things to keep our house in order. And again, the LEDs and the digitals and all these things, and who knows what's next. It's the hologram that worries me out in front of the car store. That's going to be interesting. I would certainly like to thank all of my board members for getting us to this point. We are in a go position here towards putting White Lake in a very unique position in our community and in our area. There's a lot of work to be done. There's been a tremendous amount of work done already. I really would like to thank Mr. Roman. He has been a taskmaster at times.
It's a
and
team effort all the way.
And he comes in, and we go over things, and we have spent a tremendous amount of time in our old boardroom, and Anthony and myself and Sean. And, it's just trying to get through the mechanics of this so that we can bring it to this board and show what's going on. It's very difficult because you're not there every day, we are, and things sometimes can go this way, and then within a millisecond, go that way. And so it's a constant moving target, but we're going in the right direction. I appreciate everyone realizing the value and the importance of maximizing our borrowing power, so it puts us in a good fiscal position for the future. Also, the determinations that we made to keep our buildings as the sizes that we can so that it will accommodate our growth and the employees for the future. God willing, we'll be able to make it all come together. I have talked to multiple restaurateurs who have called me and asked me what's going to be available. So we do have some people. Last night I was at a restaurant, and the owner came up to me last night and was very anxious to know what's going on, and he wants to see some kind of plan because he plans on being a part of it.
Cool.
So
That wasn't a sit-down restaurant then?
that was a sit-down restaurant, yeah. So there are people that are looking to come this way, so we're in good shape. So with that, I will say, again, thank you to all my board members, staff, everyone. I've got something to show you, a unique piece of property, so we're going to talk, okay? I've been out where you're at, but